Chapter 2174. Crow suddenly opened his cloak, and in an instant, hundreds of corpse soul crows leapt out from under his cloak. The crows covered the sky and flew toward Bifla. However, before the corpse soul crows could even touch Bifla, they fell like rain. There was no way to attack. At least, Qinzhao couldn't tell how Bifla attacked. But it was the same as killing the criminals. Crow's expression changed. If Qinzhao couldn't tell, Crow and his subordinates couldn't either. What was going on? Fraser Ambitak also had a surprised look on his face. She'd never met someone as strong as Bifla before. Even her father was insignificant compared to Bifla. Bifla's strength wasn't because of his aura or terrifying pressure. It was because he was silent. Even if he stood before them, he was as ethereal as air. Crow glanced at his subordinates. Attack together. At the same time, all sorts of spells shot towards Bifla. But Bifla didn't move. On the other hand, Fraser Umbitak, who was watching from the side, felt his heart skip a beat. Crow and his subordinates weren't weak. In fact, they were a bit too strong. Even the gigantic Anubis construct from before would not be able to withstand the attacks of the 10 of them. But before the spells could touch Bifla, they returned to their most primitive mana and were absorbed by Bifla. Of course, Crow and his subordinates didn't know that their spells had become mana and were absorbed by Bifla. But Qinzhao could feel that Bifla's move was very similar to his non-elemental constitution. But Bifla seemed to be of a higher level. Qinzhao's non-elemental constitution could only disintegrate directional spells. But Bifla didn't just disintegrate them. He even absorbed them into mana. It was similar to the mouth of gluttony. Crow and his subordinates weren't satisfied. They kept attacking Bifla crazily. Bifla didn't reject them. No matter how many spells they threw at him, he absorbed them all. After a while, Crow and his subordinates used up 30 to 40% of their mana. Bifla still stood there. No matter what spell they used, it couldn't really hit Bifla. How could they fight? Bifla was already invincible. In the end, they still stopped. Are you tired? It's my turn to attack. Bifla raised the back of his hand. His arm and palm were hanging limply in front of him, as if they were boneless. Crow and his men were all bristling with anger. Danger! 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 This man was extremely dangerous. The crow subconsciously used its life-saving trump card. The others did the same, each displaying their own strengths. Bifla suddenly made a grabbing motion, and a wave of heat surged forth. A giant flaming claw appeared out of thin air and grabbed all 10 of them. Ah! Help! A black corpse soul crow flapped its flaming wings, frantically trying to escape from the flaming claws. This black corpse soul crow was the crow's transformation spell. However, he didn't even have the chance to dodge. The flaming claw exploded in an instant. This explosion did not spread outwards but collapsed inwards. Even the soul-devouring crow that the crow had transformed into was sucked into the collapse by the huge pulling force. In the end, everything turned into a red dot and disappeared. These people aren't bad. The magic they provided me can actually use the claw of destruction, Bifla said casually. They're quite strong. Fraser Imbritak stared at Bifla in fear. Too strong. This man was so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. What he was facing was Crow and his team. They weren't just any team. Crow and his team were definitely the strongest participants in this battle of the Holy Glory. However, such a strong team had been killed so easily. Who was this man? Why did he have such terrifying power? This spell is so cool, Qinzhao exclaimed. His focus wasn't on the power. The claw of destruction was indeed shocking to normal spiritualists. However, in his eyes it wasn't enough. It was like the giant palm that Qinzhao had condensed with the power of the world. It looked powerful, but it was actually useless to people of the same level. Bifla's claw of destruction was the same. There seems to be a battle over there, Bifla said. Let's go take a look. Sure, how far? Qinzhao didn't sense any battle ripples. Bifla could actually sense a battle that was beyond his range of perception. Qinzhao somewhat admired Bifla. After all, in terms of combat ability, Qinzhao was definitely above him. However, Bifla was an old monster that had lived for hundreds of years. His knowledge and understanding of magic were definitely not something Qinzhao could compare to. Fraser Imbritak wanted to talk to Qinzhao and Bifla a bit more. She didn't dare to say that she could become friends with them, but she could at least let them get to know her. Perhaps she would need them to take care of her in the future. There was no harm in getting to know them. Unfortunately, she was still one step too late. Bifla and Chen Zhao's sudden departure dumbfounded Fraser Embritak. How could she not understand now? These two were definitely the top existences in the spiritual world. They might not even be participants. They were probably invited guests. She hoped that the invited guests wouldn't be test targets in the future. Otherwise, it would be big trouble. In the past Battle of Holy Glory, special guests were invited to be in charge of assessing the participants. However, there were strong and weak guests among the invited guests. Of course, it would be good if they met a weaker guest. However, if this year's Battle of the Holy Glory used invited guests to test the participants again, and if they met these two people, it wouldn't be about passing the test. It would be about staying alive. It could be seen from the two's casual attacks. Even a casual attack from them would probably result in a disaster. Bifla, where's your team? Are they here? They're here, Bifla said calmly. But I can't sense their location. It can't be. I can sense my team. How can you not sense it? They're good at hiding. If they're within a certain range, I can sense their aura. But they're too far away, so I can't. Maybe they've already been eliminated. Bifla glanced at Chen Zhao indifferently. No, they're all very strong. Not necessarily. There are many strong people here. My students are the best. Chapter 2175. Chen Zhao and Bifla arrived beside a lake. The two stood by the lake. Right now, a huge battle was happening above the lake. Around a dozen teams were engaged in a chaotic battle. The strength of these dozen or so teams was quite impressive. Chen Zhao and Bifla stood by the lake and watched the battle. An elemental ice mage created a huge block of ice. At the same time, this piece of ice also became everyone's battlefield. The battle was very intense, but everyone held back. Most people didn't use their full strength. They didn't want to kill either. Everyone had some restraint. Thus, to Chen Zhao and Bifla, this battle was rather boring. What are they fighting for? Chen Zhao asked. Why do you think they're definitely fighting for something? Bifla asked. Apart from fighting for something, they're fighting because they have nothing better to do. They're not fighting for something. It's because they have grudges outside, and they want to weaken their opponents, Bifla said. Bifla said, that blue-robed Taoist nun is from Mount Longhu. Everyone here who is wearing Taoist robes is from Mount Longhu. They can be said to be seated contestants, and their strength is quite good. Chen Zhao looked in the direction Bifla was pointing. There was indeed an eye-catching nun. 6 people were ganging up on her, but they couldn't do anything to her. Looks like they're not all ganging up on them, Chen Zhao said. Of course, every organization has its own allies, not to mention a sect like Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect that has a positive image. Many of the teams that are willing to help them and fight with them have learned from Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect, or are willing to do them a favor. Of course, there are also teams that are helping Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect purely because of personal grudges. Chen Zhao rubbed his chin, wondering if he should join in. You'd better keep your thoughts to yourself. For such a large-scale battle, the organizers will definitely keep a close eye on you. Especially when the two of us came. We didn't hide our whereabouts. The organizers' spies should have already noticed us. If you interfere with this battle royale at this time, it's likely that you'll be blacklisted. It doesn't matter even if I'm on the blacklist, Chen Zhao said nonchalantly. Can they kill me? Maybe they won't directly target you, but you have a team. If the organizers can't target you, can't they target your team? Chen Zhao thought about it and realized that it made sense. Forget it. If you don't want to play, then so be it. Senior Sister Zhu Bai, there are 2 people by the lake. They have been observing for a long time. I don't know if they are friends or foes. Zhu Bai glanced at Chen Zhao and Bifla by the lake. In fact, she had already seen the 2 of them. However, she didn't have the time to think about whether they were friend or foe. Although her senior and junior brothers helped to relieve the pressure on her. But the situation was not optimistic. After all, there were only 5 teams on her side, including the team from Mount Longhu's Celestial Master Sect. Their opponents, on the other hand, had 9 teams, which was almost twice their number. The Celestial Master sect of Longhu Mountain was indeed very strong. However, blocking 3 teams at the same time was already their limit. Any more and they would definitely lose. The other teams on the same side could only fight one-on-one at most. Therefore, the situation was very disadvantageous to them. The opponent's goal was very clear. It was to stall the Celestial Master sect's team first. Then, they would defeat the other allied teams one by one. Finally, they would turn around and deal with the Celestial Master sect. The situation was tense, but Zhu Bai's mind was as clear as water. Right now, the entire situation was in her head. With the Celestial Master sect's team's strength, it wasn't impossible for them to leave. However, the problem now was that if they left now, then they would be abandoning their allies. If the outcome of this Holy Glory battle was related to honor, then abandoning their allies was equivalent to abandoning their honor. Zhu Bai would rather lose her entire team than do something that would humiliate her sect. Even if she didn't get the title of Holy Glory, it didn't mean that the Celestial Master sect was weak. However, if she did something that would humiliate her sect, then the entire sect would be humiliated. The opponent's goal was also very simple, to steal their spoils. If they could injure a few people from the Celestial Master sect, so that they couldn't participate in the next competition, that would be for the best. However, the 2 people outside the battle zone were indeed potential threats. Their goal was likely to be the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Another possibility was that they were unaffiliated spiritualists. As for the idle spiritualists who accepted the invitation to the Battle of Holy Glory, every single one of them was powerful. Thus, Zhu Bai couldn't let her guard down. However, Zhu Bai's energy alone was limited. Just as she was thinking about her strategy, her attack and defense weakened. At this moment, Zhu Bai's heart suddenly became alert. Danger! Zhu Bai jumped away subconsciously. Then, the ice floe she was standing on suddenly exploded. A figure shot toward Zhu Bai from under the ice floe. Zhu Bai immediately took out her horsetail whisk. 1,000 threads swept toward the figure. The figure had already lost the initiative after missing the first attack. Now it wanted to attack Zhu Bai directly. However, there was still a difference in strength between them. He was instantly swept up by Zhu Bai's horsetail whisk. Zhu Bai's heart jumped. She suddenly threw the person into the air. The person smashed toward Chen Zhao and Bifla on the shore. She's attacking us, right? We can fight back, right? Chen Zhao asked immediately. No. Even though you and I both know that she's attacking us on purpose, we made a mistake first. Even if we asked the organizers to judge, we're not in the right. What do you mean we made a mistake first? I didn't do that. No, when they were fighting, we entered the danger zone. The organizer has a rule that if the spectators enter a battle circle rashly, even if they are attacked, they are not allowed to fight back. Even if they want to watch the battle, they have to keep a distance. So, in the end, we were the ones who made the mistake first. So troublesome. Chen Zhao pursed his lips. He looked at the spiritualist who had fallen before him. The spiritualist had fallen more than 10 meters away, but he wasn't seriously injured. At least he still had some combat ability. His first reaction when he saw Chen Zhao and Bifla was to attack. In this chaotic battle, anyone who wasn't a friend was an enemy. Chen Zhao kicked the spiritualist back into the battle. This was the first time Chen Zhao had stayed out of a battle in the spiritual world with this identity. Chen Zhao's hands itched, but it wasn't convenient for him to attack. After all, he was now a senior in the spiritual world. Chapter 2176. As the battle continued, it started to go out of control. More and more teams joined the battle. Many teams had grudges against each other. Even if they were on the same side, there were still grudges. Or maybe both sides had grudges. This led to internal problems on both sides. There were already a dozen teams fighting. An hour later, there were more than 30 teams. The 2 sides had turned into a multi-sided battle. More than 300 spiritualists were attacking each other. All sorts of dazzling spells, and spells flew everywhere. Chen Zhao was dazed, as if he'd transmigrated to a magical world. However, this battle was also extremely enjoyable to watch. Chen Zhao had been in the spiritual world for 2 years. He'd even become the president of a supernatural organization. But this was the first time he'd seen a real magical battle. Just then, dark clouds suddenly gathered in the sky. They covered the entire lake and the surrounding area. At first, no one noticed the dark clouds in the sky. But soon, someone realized the problem. They were in an alternate dimension. There were no weather changes in the alternate dimension. Suddenly, a bolt of lightning fell from the sky. It landed in the center of the battlefield, on the huge ice floe. There had been 20 to 30 spiritualists fighting on the ice floe. This was because when this bolt of lightning landed, it blasted the 30-odd spiritualists into the air. The ice floe, which was at least 300 square meters, shattered instantly. Just then a figure appeared in the sky. The figure looked like a celestial, as if a fairy had descended. Chen Zhao looked over. Wasn't that Zhang Tianyi? But Chen Zhao had never seen Zhang Tianyi dressed like this. Zhang Tianyi gave off an aura that made people want to worship him. He looked down at the living beings below him from above. Isn't this against the rules? Chen Zhao said, pointing at Zhang Tianyi. He has the right. He has the right to do so. He was originally one of the 3 chairmen elected by the Holy Glory organizers. And he is also responsible for enforcing the law during the Battle of Holy Glory. But he disrupted the battle. He didn't disrupt the battle. If the battle continues, a large number of thoughts may appear. And it may even affect the progress of the Holy Glory battle. That's why he appeared to stop the battle from worsening. That's favoritism. Didn't you notice? There's no one from Mount Longhu's Celestial Master sect on the floating ice. If it were you, what would you do? Of course, Chen Zhao said matter-of-factly. I'll blast them into pieces. So, isn't it only natural for Celestial Master Zhang to do this? Many of the teams below dared not speak out even though they were angry. After all, he was Zhang Tianyi. All right, everyone disperse. Zhang Tianyi waved his hand and said. A few groups of people were still unwilling to give up. They thought that they had the upper hand just now. There was a high chance that they could cause trouble for Zhu Bai's team. But Zhang Tianhing's interference made their advantage disappear in an instant. In fact, once Zhu Bai's team recovered and turned around to deal with them, they would be in danger. Therefore, when they left, their eyes were filled with unwillingness. Zhu Bai heaved a sigh of relief. Actually, she could feel that her grandmaster's appearance was too ingenious. The situation just now was already very dangerous. If their grandmaster didn't show up, then they would most likely lose a lot of people. The other teams left one after another. Zhu Bai looked up at Zhang Tianyi in the sky. Just then, Zhang Tianyi descended from the sky. Zhu Bai and the other teammates all waved their sleeves and lowered their heads, waiting to greet Zhang Tianyi. However, Zhang Tianyi didn't land in front of them. Instead, he landed by the lake. Zhu Bai looked over and realized that it was the 2 people from before. Zhu Bai remembered very clearly that those 2 people had arrived an hour ago. They had been standing by the lake and watching the chaotic battle. At first, Zhu Bai thought that they were trying to take advantage of the situation. However, they didn't do anything. Even if someone attacked them, they would only dodge. Zhu Bai thought that they had already left. She didn't expect them to still be there. Hi, old Zhang. Chen Zhao greeted Zhang Tianyi grinning. Zhang Tianyi glanced at Chen Zhao and Baifla. You guys didn't behave at all when you came in. We're all following the rules, Chen Zhao said confidently. If not, would you still be here? Zhang Tianyi sneered. Baifla looked at Zhang Tianyi. You purposely lured Crow to us, right? Chen Zhao was stunned. Was that true? Didn't they just meet Crow by chance? What's going on? Why do I feel like I'm being kept in the dark? You think it's a coincidence? Isn't it? The woman who was being chased by the Anubis construct was deliberately led to us. At that time, the crow's pet was following the woman, and you coincidentally killed the crow's pet. Naturally, the crow came to us. You need evidence, Zhang Tianyi said, dissatisfied. We're spiritualists, Baifla said calmly. As long as it's a suspicion, it's the truth. We don't need evidence. That's true. Chen Zhao looked at Zhang Tianyi. Old Zhang, this is hard for me. Using us to get rid of the hated team of the organizers is just using us. I hate it when people scheme against me. Zhang Tianyi looked at Chen Zhao. Just say what you need, Zhang Tianyi said with a dark expression. Don't beat around the bush. I don't need much, Chen Zhao said with a smile. I just want the entire process of the Battle of Holy Glory. I can't give you the entire process, Chen Zhao said with a reasonable smile. After all, we're still researching the process. We don't have definite results yet, so I can't give it to you even if I want to. I can give you the process of the next project. If you accept it, then we're even. If not, then forget it. Chen Zhao and Bifla exchanged glances. Bifla nodded slightly, indicating that he accepted the condition. How about something more practical like cash compensation? Chen Zhao suggested. Zhang Tianyi and Bifla couldn't help but roll their eyes. The second test is to find the Soul Essence Stone. After the first round, the desolate land market will be rearranged to hide at least 1,000 Soul Essence Stones. Only those who find at least one Soul Essence Stone can pass. So only 1,000 people are left for the second test. At most, Zhang Tianyi said. Maybe less than 1,000 can find the Soul Stone. Chapter 2177. How about you tell me a few places to hide them? Zhang Tianyi rolled his eyes. Do you think that's possible? Since you've already made an exception once, I don't think you mind making an exception a second time. I do. The test you and the organizer chose isn't fair at all, Chen Zhao complained. Some spiritualists are good at searching, some are good at predicting, and some are good at detecting, but some are only good at fighting. How are they supposed to find them? There's nothing absolutely fair in this world. Also, do you think the second test is better for the spiritualists you mentioned? Isn't it? Other than 1,000 real Soul Essence Stones, there are 10,000 fake Soul Essence Stones. Whether they are real or fake, they are guarded by a lot of demon beasts and magical beasts. Among them, there are a lot of powerful demon beasts and magical beasts. What about the spiritualists who are good at searching, sensing, detecting, and prophecy? Chen Zhao pursed his lips. Zhang Tianyi had a somewhat victorious smile. Even if he won in a verbal battle, it was still a victory. You're so boring. Chen Zhao turned and left. Celestial Master Zhang goodbye. Bifla also left with Chen Zhao. Just then, Zhu Bai and the other disciples walked over. Greetings, Grandmaster. Okay, during the Battle of the Holy Glory, don't call me Grandmaster. I'm the Elder of Discipline, Zhang Tianyi said. Zhang Tianyi said. Alright, it's not convenient for me to communicate with you now. Let's wait until the Battle of Holy Glory is over. Yes, Grandmaster. By the way, Zhang Tianyi hesitated for a moment before reminding them. If you encounter those two people again, avoid them if you can. Don't get into a dispute with them. Don't have any disputes at all. Grandmaster. Who are those two? 2 asterisks holes. Ignore them. As long as you don't provoke them first, they won't attack you. Yes, Grandmaster. Alright, I've said enough. It's time to go. With that, Zhang Tianyi's figure gradually disappeared before Zhu Bai and the others. Zhu Bai and the others had no idea how Zhang Tianyi disappeared. A few seconds later, Zhang Tianyi appeared on the rooftop of a building. The 23rd generation Blood Mary also appeared on the rooftop of the building. Old Zhang, you're talking too much with your disciples and grand disciples. It's against the rules. What I'm talking about is unrelated to this event. The 23rd Blood Mary didn't plan to pursue the matter any further. She had known Zhang Tianyi for almost 100 years, so she knew his character very well. I found traces of the Hermit Order, the 23rd Blood Mary said. Hidden Cultivator Sect. Zhang Tianyi's expression changed. Yes, that troublesome organization. Why did these mad dogs come out? Zhang Tianyi asked. The reason why they were called mad dogs was because the Hermit Order never did anything proper, only doing bad things. They were present in the 2 world-class wars of the last century, and in those 2 world wars, mortals fought against mortals. On the other hand, the spiritual realm was fighting against the Hidden Cultivators sect. Of course, this doesn't mean that the Hidden Cultivators sect can go against the entire spiritual world. In reality, the Hermit Order wouldn't directly oppose other organizations most of the time. They were troublemakers, all kinds of troublemakers, all kinds of moths. For example, he could create a few calamity-grade monsters. For example, he could release a few legendary demon lords. Or perhaps he could release a few large-scale catastrophic magic spells. In any case, during that era, if a supernatural disaster were to occur in any part of the world, The first thing that the spirit controllers thought of would be the hermit order. Moreover, this kind of conjecture was most likely correct. Speaking of which, the hermit order's ambition wasn't that bad. After all, everyone has their own dreams. It was just that they were a bit out of touch with the times. 100 years ago, having such a dream would have been considered noble. 100 years later, if they still had such a dream, that would be considered low. World domination. Indeed, the hermit order's ambition was to rule the world. Furthermore, they had been working tirelessly towards that goal. Furthermore, they did very well in the first phase. The first phase of their plan was to cause destruction. However, other than the first phase, they didn't seem to know how to proceed with the second phase of their plan. Or rather, they didn't even have a second phase of their plan. Especially after the severe beatings. Even in the spiritual world, there were severe beatings. The current prosperity and stability of the spiritual world was created through repeated beatings. Fighting against evil, upholding justice and fairness, even in the spiritual world, that was what they advocated. Of course, there were also some outdated rules and bad habits. Furthermore, the concept of fairness in the spiritual world was different from that of the mortal world. In the spiritual world, the hierarchy was even more obvious. Because most of the time, the higher the hierarchy, the more powerful they were. For example, Zhang Tianyi, he was in existence at the top of the pyramid. At the same time, the reason why he was able to stand at the top of the pyramid was because of his strength. What did they do this time? Their target was Wendy, the 23rd Blood Mary replied. The 23rd generation Blood Mary said. Wendy was ambushed. Of course, it was just a probing attack. Wendy was unscathed and used the attackers as fertilizer. Wendy was one of the 3 chairmen of Holy Glory. The Anubis constructs here were created by him. There were over 100,000 Anubis constructs in the wasteland market. And these 100,000 Anubis constructs were created by Wendy himself, without the help of anyone else. How much mana was needed to create such a large number of Anubis constructs? Not to mention, such a large project wasn't something that could be completed by human effort. And yet, Wendy managed to accomplish such an impossible task all by himself. Don't tell me the Hermit Order's goal is to obtain the Anubis constructs technology from Wendy? That's possible, the 23rd Blood Mary nodded. How about we seal Wendy away? That way, the Hermit Order won't be able to find him no matter how much trouble they cause, Zhang Tianyi smiled and said. Sure, if you want to do it yourself. I don't want to experience the world's #1 alchemist. Alright, I was just joking. Wendy was the world's #1 alchemist. No one in this world could seal him away. Wendy was the weakest of the 3 chairmen. But he was also the most terrifying one. There was no one at the same level as him who could defeat him. Even Zhang Tianyi didn't want to get into a conflict with Wendy. During this Holy Glory battle, Wendy was responsible for creating all of the tools used in the assessment and trial. However, while those rabid dogs are crazy, their probing attack this time was a bit crude. The people they sent weren't able to probe Wendy's strength, but instead raised our guard. Do you really think they would be so reckless? Chapter 2178. At this moment, in one of the ruins, a few spiritualists had proud and complacent looks on their faces. His words were filled with a strong sense of pride and disdain. One of them was dressed rather exaggeratedly with a mustache and colorful clothes like a clown. However, it was worth noting that one of his eyes was green, and the other was purple. I'm leading them by the nose now. They think our target is the technology in Wen's hands, but they don't know that our real target isn't Wen at all. Another big guy sitting cross-legged on the ground said in a rude voice. Marfa, I just want to know when I can do something big. When can I make a ruckus and kill without restraint? Hulus don't rush, Marfa said. You'll be able to do whatever you want soon. There was also a super fat guy hiding in a corner. He kept eating. While these people were discussing, they suddenly heard a commotion coming from not far away. A woman in green appeared on the wall. A team is outside. Huh. Did they notice us? No. Can you let me kill them? Hulus asked. Marfa thought for a while and said, Sure, but the battlefield is limited to this ruin. If we go beyond this ruin, we'll be discovered by the monitors. They can't escape this ruin. Hulu's grinned, revealing his fangs. West and the others searched aimlessly. None of them knew how to track the Anubis structures. Thus, they could only wander aimlessly. Luckily, there were many Anubis structures in the entire wasteland market. Along the way, they had hunted quite a lot. Of course, they also encountered other teams. But most teams didn't fight with them. Everyone kept a certain distance. Not every team was so arrogant and rude. Most teams still maintained a sense of caution and respect for each other. Of course, not every team was willing to coexist peacefully either. Some teams would still stir up some trouble. They would first test the strength of the Supernatural Organizations team. If the Supernatural Organizations team wasn't strong enough, they would definitely start a fight. If the Supernatural Organizations team was strong, they would choose to retreat. To put it bluntly, it was bullying the weak and fearing the strong. Fortunately, the Supernatural Organization was not weak. Apart from the first team they encountered, the two sides had engaged in a fierce battle, and they even snatched the other party's demon pearl. At other times, it was just a small friction. The Supernatural Organization thought it was a good idea to fight for other teams' loot. Let's not talk about the risks first. At least in terms of efficiency, it wasn't as fast as killing monsters. That was why they were more willing to hunt the constructs of Anubis, rather than going up against other teams. At this moment, Mord suddenly stopped. There are others here. Everyone stopped in their tracks as well. At this time, a few figures walked out from behind a wall. Alarm bells were ringing in everyone's hearts. These people were extremely dangerous. Even if they didn't make any moves, they didn't feel any pressure. However, the people from the association could feel that the people in front of them were extremely dangerous. Hulu's, I'll leave them to you, Marfa said indifferently. I will catch up to you soon. A cruel smile appeared on Hulu's face. Just like that, the few of them left Hulu's behind, while the others turned around and left. Everyone in the association narrowed their eyes. They had encountered quite a few arrogant teams, but none had been as arrogant as the people in front of them. One person against 10 of them? This was no longer arrogance. This was arrogance. Mord didn't wait for them to leave. He attacked first. Lava vines. In an instant, countless vines drilled out of the ground and madly attacked the people in front of them. Hulu suddenly swung his arms and slashed out in a cross. Hulu's slash created a meat grinder space within a 30-meter radius. Everything within this space was sliced apart. All the lava vines were instantly sliced into pieces. Marfa and the others turned to look at the people from the association, surprised. They look quite strong. Hulu's, are you sure you can handle them alone? Strong? Why didn't I notice? Hulu's rubbed his 10 fingers together. His fingers had sharp claws like those of a carnivore, and his exposed skin was covered in thick fur. However, he was still in his human form. There weren't many changes. Alright, let's go. Suddenly, Dongye Tianqi attacked. His attack was as swift as the wind. The white-faced phantom demon slashed at Hulu's. Hulu's claws reached for the blade. Dongye Tianqi's expression changed. There was nothing the white-faced phantom demon couldn't cut. But it couldn't cut through Hulu's claws. At the same time, he realized that he couldn't pull the sword out. Gaia also attacked. The great sword on her back ignited in flames the moment she pulled it out. The flaming greatsword slashed at Hulu's. Hulu's had been holding the sword with both claws. Seeing Gaia's attack coming, he immediately used one hand to grab the flaming greatsword. Gaia also realized that her strength and the flaming greatsword couldn't cut through Hulu's palm. In fact, in terms of strength, she was much weaker than Hulu's. Just then Lisa launched an attack. She aimed at Hulu's body from a distance. Boom! Hulu's was sent flying dozens of meters away. But Hulu's still managed to stand up, seemingly unharmed. This was unexpected, but also within the association's expectations. As confident as they were, they had to admit that this man was very powerful. This man was very powerful. If they were even slightly careless, it was very likely that they would suffer a crushing defeat here. Hulu's grinned, revealing a mouthful of fangs. You guys are very powerful. To show my respect, I've decided to kill you in my second form. Everyone's expression changed. Did he not use his full strength just now? Hulu's limbs and torso began to thicken. His clothes were torn, revealing his greenish-black fur. His face had changed slightly. He now looked like a beast, but he still looked more like a human. His body grew from nearly 2 meters to at least 3.5 meters. "Are you ready to die?" Boom! A terrifying fireball blasted Hulu's body. "If you want to fight, then fight." "Cut the crap," Jalanash said. Chapter 2179. Okay. Hulu suddenly jumped up and charged at Jalanash. But at that moment, Hulu felt the air freeze. Then he froze. Wes pointed his finger at his temple and released all his magic. One had to admit that Hulu was unbelievably strong. In the past, he had been able to control the field, and even if he had to face dozens of people, he could still easily stop them. But Hulu made his magic power pour out like a tidal wave. The moment Hulu was immobilized, Dongya Tianqi launched a sneak attack. One-word script. Dongya Tianqi roared. A huge sword energy slashed at Hulu's. But it couldn't tear through Hulu's defense in the end. Dongya Tianqi's defense was astonishing. One should know that Dongya Tianqi's blade could even split a building in half. But it couldn't cut through Hulu's skin. Hulu grinned. He could feel that although West had locked him in place, he had to consume a large amount of mana. He didn't need to waste too much energy to drag it out until West was exhausted. West decided to stop the slow field before he ran out of magic. Just then Norma attacked. Norma's soul came out of his body and turned into a nightmare horse. The nightmare walked in the air. Each step left a green flame flower in the air. When the nightmare shapeshifter arrived in front of Hulu's, its 2 hooves stomped on Hulu's chest. But it didn't do any damage to Hulu's. Of course, this was also because it wasn't a physical attack. Hulu's body shook slightly. Then, he swung his arm and shattered the nightmare. The nightmare turned into green flames and reformed. Norma, is it useless? His soul and body are too closely connected. I can't blast his soul out of his body. There was still a big gap between their abilities. This made Norma's attack seem very weak. It was just like how Norma couldn't blast Chen Zhao's soul out of his body, because Chen Zhao's power and the strength of his soul weren't something Norma could shake. Although Hulu's wasn't as strong as Chen Zhao, he still had an unshakable soul. Of course, Norma's attack wasn't completely useless. At the very least, Norma's soul attack was a deterrent to Hulu's. Hulu's glanced at Norma's nightmare form. He knew that no matter how he attacked it, it would be useless. But soon, his gaze landed on Norma's flesh. Then he charged towards Norma's body. Gaia instantly transformed into a fire dragon and spat out a dragon's breath at Hulu's. Hulu's eyelids twitched. He didn't expect Gaia to be a mixed-blood dragon. He did not want to be hit by this dragon breath. Therefore, he immediately dodged. However, just as he was about to dodge, a figure blocked his path even faster than him. An elite took action. Previously, he had not made a move. He grasped this opportunity. The dragonbone dagger in his hand stabbed towards Hulu's throat. Hulu's tensed up. He could feel the threat of an elite and the bone dagger in his hand. At some point, Hulu's tensed his muscles. The dragonbone dagger in Angelite's hand only pierced into the skin, but there was no sensation to speak of. It was obvious that his meticulous attack did not cause any substantial damage to Hulu's. Taking advantage of Angelite's pause, Hulu's punched towards an elite. Although he was not as fast as an elite, he was still very fast. An elite was so scared that he immediately stepped back, and the fist brushed past him. Bang! There was a sonic boom in the air. An elite had already retreated 20 meters. If he had been hit by that punch just now, even if he did not die, he would be crippled. An elite was the fastest man in the association. However, his defense was very weak. At this moment, Gaia's dragon tail swept towards Hulu's. Hulu's grabbed the dragon's tail and swept it horizontally. The fire dragon that Gaia had transformed into was smashed into a mess. Gaia turned around and unleashed dragon breath. Hulu's once again dodged at high speed. Just as Gaia was about to get up, Hulu's had already descended from the sky and smashed heavily into Gaia's head. Gaia spat out blood. Hulu's picked up the dragon tooth that Gaia had spat out. What an enjoyable battle. I did not expect to be able to hunt a dragon. Although it is only a young dragon, let me be a dragon slayer today. Boom! Due to Hulu's carelessness, Lisa's sneak attack was successful. Lisa knew when was the best time to attack. Although Hulu's did not receive much damage, Lisa's 2 sneak attacks had infuriated him. Stupid little bug. Hulu's directly charged towards Lisa this time. However, at the next moment a dark cloud shrouded Hulu's. Hulu's body stopped in midair and quickly retreated. Death Mage. Hulu's frowned. This was the first time he showed such an expression. At the same time, he felt that his body was showing signs of being corroded. He did not notice it at all during the intense battle with the others. The aura of death had unknowingly invaded his body. Although the amount of aura of death was not large, it was not enough to pose a fatal threat to him. The effect it could have on him was minimal. However, if he continued to be delayed by the others, if he continued to inhale more aura of death, he might really fail miserably. Hulu's knew his strengths and his weaknesses. Death mages were also the type that he disliked fighting the most. That was because the opponent's attack method was too strange. Most of the time, he did not even notice it, and he would already be hit. Although Helios looked calm on the surface, but she did not think that she alone would be Hulu's opponent. Even so, many of her companions were unable to pose a threat to Hulu's. She was afraid that she would not be able to do anything alone. However, what surprised her was that Hulu's actually chose to retreat. Very good, your strength is not bad. I will let you go this time. However, the next time I meet you, you will see how terrifying my third form is. Everyone's eyelids twitched. This kind of monstrous strength. Is this still not his strongest strength? He still has a third form? Everyone's heart was shrouded in a layer of haze. In the battle just now, no one dared to say that they used their full strength. However, they were at least 80%. Even so, they were still at a disadvantage when facing Hulu's alone. If Hulu's did not go easy on them, and directly used his third form, how many of them would still be alive now? This dragon tooth belongs to me. As for the dragon head, I will temporarily keep it. Next time, I will complete this dragon-slaying feat. 9 Heavens Godly Emperor. Chapter 2180. Crushing Defeat. Everyone in the association was dispirited. This was the first crushing defeat they'd suffered since Chen Zhao became the president. They couldn't even find an excuse. If that person hadn't retreated, if that person had used the third form from the start, if he had the third form, in that case, it was very likely that they would be completely annihilated. West clapped his hands and said loudly, "Okay kids, how long are you going to slack off? Can a single loss really defeat all of you?" West had to pull himself together now. He was the leader, so he had to lead, even though he was also feeling depressed. But he couldn't show it. He had to pretend to be strong. Actually, why didn't that person use the third form? Everyone knew. That person might not be familiar with the third form. He might lose control or become obsessed. There was another possibility. The third form wouldn't last long. It wouldn't be of critical use. Unless they had no other choice, it was better not to use it. Maybe I should inform the president now. Seeing that everyone was still depressed, West could only say something harsh. Gaia wiped the blood from her mouth and stood up. "Don't inform anyone. I haven't been defeated yet." Flames burned in her eyes. "Next time, I'll use my own power to take revenge." At the same time, Chen Zhao, who didn't know anything, was still wandering around. The Baron Bazaar was very big. Chen Zhao and Biflo wouldn't be able to finish it in 3 days and 3 nights. There were also battlefields everywhere. Battles between teams. Battles between teams and Anubis constructs. It was an eye-opener for Chen Zhao. That's right, it was an eye-opener. Chen Zhao realized that he'd been too narrow in the past. Although Chen Zhao had interacted with many high-level and powerful beings, he had never met anyone who was as powerful as him. But he didn't know much about truly brilliant magic and spells. Only now did Chen Zhao realize that the brilliance and richness of magic were enough to make anyone gasp in amazement. Right now, Chen Zhao and Biflo were standing on the rooftop of a skyscraper. A fierce battle was taking place in the square directly below the skyscraper. 2 guilds, and a terrifying construct of Anubis. Chen Zhao had already figured out the classification of Anubis constructs. Below was an Anubis construct that had undergone 9 fusion processes. The first team had fused with the Anubis construct. As they were about to destroy it, the second team appeared. The objective of the second team was very clear. They wanted to snatch the Anubis construct's demon orb. However, the result was beyond the two teams' expectations. The strength of this Anubis construct, which had been fused 9 times, was beyond their imagination. In the beginning, the two teams had been fighting against each other, completely disregarding the construct of Anubis. When Anubis construct entered the battlefield, it killed 3 people on the spot and heavily injured 2 others. Only then did the two teams realize that they had made a mistake. As a result, the two teams had no choice but to join forces to fight against the Anubis construct in order to preserve their lives. Chen Zhao watched the battle in the square excitedly. Bifla suddenly shifted his gaze and gazed into the distance. What happened? There's also an interesting battle over there, Bifla said as he pointed to the left. Oh, how so? There are 2 very powerful teams fighting intensely, Bifla said. I can recognize one of them. It should be a team from the church. The leader is Chief Consul Matthew, who's also John's favorite student. The other team is unfamiliar. I can't tell where they're from, but they're also very powerful. Huh. The battle seems to have ended, Bifla muttered to himself. Bifla, how did you know about the battle that's happening so far away? Don't tell me it's because of the battle aura or waves. My senses are definitely stronger than yours. If I can't feel it, how did you? That's why I said you're still too young. The years I've experienced have made me wiser and more knowledgeable. You'll never be able to catch up to me in this regard. Chen Zhao pursed his lips. Are you trying to take advantage of your seniority? I'll go over and take a look, Bifla said. Didn't you say the battle was over? What's there to see? When I first sensed it, the battle was still very intense, but it ended in an instant. This is very strange. Maybe something happened outside of my perception. Matthew is His Holiness John's student. If something happened to him, and he didn't help, he would be blamed by His Holiness John. Fine, go. Saving people isn't my forte, so I won't cause trouble. Chen Zhao clearly wasn't interested in saving people, especially when they were strangers. Chen Zhao really didn't know John well. Even if they met again, they would at most nod and greet each other. Bifla quickly flew into the air and disappeared into the gray air. Chen Zhao lifted his head and looked at the sky. The battle below was still intense. It could even be described as exciting. However, Chen Zhao's attention had shifted. How did Bifla know what was happening in the distance? Normally, the range of a small world should be the limit of one's senses, right? Bifla wasn't even in the Shangqing state. He didn't have a small world, but all the signs showed that. His perception range was even wider than Chen Zhao's pocket world. This was what Chen Zhao couldn't understand. It could even be said to be unacceptable. How exactly did Bifla do it? A spiritualist's senses were usually divided into 2 types. One was when the other party transmitted information, such as aura or pressure. The further the distance, the harder it was to transmit. It was like sound. To transmit further, one had to be louder. Aura and pressure were the same as sound. They would spread with distance, and then disappear completely. The other method was to use his own power to spread out and receive information within a certain range, just like what Chen Zhao was doing. It was like a radar. Chen Zhao felt that his and Bifla's senses weren't that much different. His senses might even be sharper. Bifla could sense what was happening further away. It was very likely that he was using some kind of information receiving spell. But for now, Chen Zhao couldn't figure out what Bifla's special spell was. Chapter 2181. On the battlefield, the 3 teams were taking a break. The people from the Grey Society panted heavily, using the time to recover their mana. The Alps Alliance didn't have it easy either. They'd used up a lot of stamina and mana in the battle. They'd also lost 2 people and 2 were heavily injured. This caused their team to almost collapse. The Anubis construct before them was simply too powerful. Previously, they had successfully fused and killed 2 Anubis constructs that had fused 8 times. The entire process had been quite easy. They'd thought that they could deal with an Anubis construct with their power. But the result was out of their expectations. The Anubis construct they'd fused was far beyond their expectations. Coupled with the Grey Society's sneak attack, Their team was thrown into chaos. In the end, the Anubis construct, who'd been the prey, succeeded. It killed 2 of them and heavily injured 2 others. Of course, the Grey Society didn't have it easy either. One was dead and one was injured. The leader of the Alps Alliance, Felto, looked around with a frown. Odai, do you feel anything strange? Felto asked in a low voice. Captain, do you also feel a very uncomfortable feeling? Odai asked. You felt it too? Yes, Odai said. I felt it not long after we clashed with the Grey Society. Do you know where the person spying on us is hiding? At the top of the building. Don't look up and don't attract his attention. Just pretend you don't know, Odai reminded in a low voice. Is it someone from the Grey Society hiding in the dark? No, the Grey Society doesn't know who it is. Plus, there were 10 of them when they appeared. How could there be another hidden person? That's why I think it's most likely to be a third team, or a random participant. Then should we do something? Not yet. We don't know their goal or background. After a brief moment of regrouping, the Anubis construct cast a covetous gaze at the 2 guilds once more. Chen Zhao sat on the edge of the rooftop. The building was about 100 meters tall. Therefore, without good eyesight, one would not be able to see Chen Zhao in this gray space. He could hear everyone's conversation below, including Odai and Felto's. Of course, Odai was able to discover him. It was mainly because Chen Zhao didn't hide it on purpose. Another reason was that Chen Zhao wasn't good at hiding, unless Chen Zhao hid in a corner. However, Chen Zhao had his own status, so he definitely wouldn't do something like that. Suddenly, Chen Zhao's attention shifted away from the battle below. Not far away, Chen Zhao saw a figure jumping between the roofs of a relatively short building. A lone wolf? Chen Zhao looked at the figure. The person also noticed Chen Zhao's gaze. He couldn't help but stop and look up at Chen Zhao. Huluz grinded his sharp teeth and leaped dozens of meters before landing on the plaza. At this moment, everyone in the square was stunned. What was going on? Who was this person? It was furry and looked like a beast druid. Or was it some sort of beast hybrid? Of course, it was also possible that he had borrowed the divine power of some god of the wilderness. Huluz was not a person who was good with words and communication. What he was better at was fighting. However, he wasn't the one who took the initiative this time. It was the construct of Anubis. The Anubis construct clearly didn't like Huluz's sudden visit. The Anubis construct opened its mouth and spat out a stream of black flames at Huluz. Huluz raised his right arm and swiped down with his claws. Hiss! In an instant, the black flames were directly smashed apart by Huluz's claws, turning into 5 tiny black torrents. Huluz's claws sliced through the air, and the Anubis construct's head was split open. The Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance all gasped. Instant kill. The orc used his claw to kill the Anubis construct? Huluz strolled to the corpse of the Anubis construct and picked up the colorful demonic bead. Hee, the second spoil of the day. Huluz started rubbing his fingers again. He glanced at the members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance around him. He couldn't resist the urge to tear them apart. However, his rationality told him that killing here would likely be exposed. By then, he would either be expelled or hunted down. This wasn't what he wanted. However, the beast in his heart kept urging him to go crazy. He really wanted to kill. He really wanted to crush all these ants. Huluz suddenly revealed a cruel smile. Hand over your spoils of war, all of them, Huluz said in an arrogant tone. The members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance were all on guard. Hand them over. Huluz suddenly raised his voice. At the same time, a terrifying pressure exploded from his body. One of the witches was frightened by Huluz and directly shot a spell at him. A cruel smile appeared on Huluz's face. He suddenly pounced at the witch. Ah! The scream only lasted for a short period of time. The witch had already been torn beyond recognition by Huluz. Chen Zhao, who was sitting at the edge of the balcony, raised an eyebrow. He didn't think that the beast would kill people. Only a visitor like him had the right to retaliate. Only when a visitor was attacked maliciously in the Wasteland Bazaar could he retaliate and kill people. The participants of the Battle of Holy Glory weren't allowed to kill each other. This meant that the beast was also one of the visitors. However, the beast's act of killing the witch just now was actually against the rules if one were to look into it. Because the witch's attack was actually a passive counterattack. The beast was trying to scare her. However, Hulu's emitted a thick murderous intent. Chun Zhao could tell that this was a mad dog dominated by bestiality. Chun Zhao suddenly left the edge of the balcony and fell from the sky. Boom! Everyone turned to look at Chun Zhao. Otter and Fielto both raised an eyebrow. This guy and the beast were together? Were they planning to kill both of their teams now? Chun Zhao walked out of the hole he'd just made. However, when Chun Zhao saw a tooth hanging from Hulu's neck, his face twitched. Your tooth seems to be a dragon's tooth. It's even bloody. Can you tell me where it came from? The dragon clan had a pair of upper canine teeth in their lower jaw. This pair of canine teeth was equivalent to the dragon clan's fingerprint. Every dragon clan's upper canine teeth were different. Chapter 2182. There weren't many dragon teeth that Chun Zhao could remember. One was Abito's, a child of his family. The other was Gaia's dragon tooth. Be it Abito's or Gaia, they were both young dragons. Even though Gaia was already an adult in human terms. But in dragon form she was still a child. Hulu's pulled off the chain with the dragon tooth hanging on it. You mean this? My spoils of war just now were obtained by killing a dragon. Hulu's face was filled with arrogance. Of course, he said this to increase his deterrence. Hunting and slaying dragons was a very shocking thing to anyone. The members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance were clearly frightened by Hulu's. Slaying a dragon? That was a legend. Then Dragon Slayer, show me what you've got. Chun Zhao hooked his finger. What? You can't wait to challenge me? Hulu's looked at Chun Zhao in disdain. Defeating a Dragon Slayer should be a glorious thing. There was a hint of coldness in Chun Zhao's smile. Be careful. Otherwise you'll really die. Captain, is it just my imagination? That Asian seems like he wants to kill someone. It's not your imagination, Felto whispered. He really wants to kill someone. That Asian doesn't know what a dragon is, right? That savage is a dragon slayer. That guy seems to be using the power of the god of the Baron. What's the god of the Baron? There are many faiths in this world. For example, Druids believe in the god of the Baron born from nature. The god of the Baron is a god even older than the god of the Baron. Basically, it's the god of the Baron from the old generation. Since they're all gods of the wilderness, why are they called the gods of the wilderness? Because the barbarian gods are gods abandoned by the rules and nature. And the barbarian gods originate from nature. Their power also comes from nature. Being abandoned by nature also means that they will wither like a flower that has lost the sun. However, these old gods are not willing to disappear just like that. So they also found a way to continue. And that is to spread their faith to the demons. As a result, they changed from the gods of nature to the gods of demons. The demons' faith is full of the power of madness, brutality, and bloodthirst, which also led to the barbarian gods giving back the power of madness, brutality, and bloodthirst. This kind of power is nothing to the demons, but for humans it is too cruel. At this moment, Hulu's turned his head to look at Odai and Felto. You seem to understand my power very well. Hulu's tone seemed calm, but there was a trace of killing intent in it. He didn't like people talking about the source of his power. Of course, the main reason was that he didn't like people discovering his weakness from the source of his power. Looks like I have to get rid of you in advance. The murderous aura around Hulu's grew stronger. Hulu's, who'd wanted to attack the two teams, suddenly exploded instinctively. I told you that you should focus on me, Chun Zhao said casually. Otherwise you'll probably die. Roar. Hulu's had always been the first to attack. Without any warning, Hulu's swung his claws at Chun Zhao. Chun Zhao raised his right hand and gently pinched Hulu's claws. Crack, ah! Hulu's cried out in pain. His 5 fingers had been crushed by Chun Zhao. He couldn't pull them back. Hulu's decisively used his right claw to tear off his left arm. Chun Zhao looked at the thick arm in his hand. He casually tossed the arm to the side. You didn't show your dragon-slaying abilities. Hulu's, the people from the Ashen Society, and the Alps Alliance all gasped. Hulu's was undoubtedly very powerful. However, the Asian on the other side gained the advantage in an instant. Hulu's took a few steps back and looked at his broken arm. You don't think you can win like this, right? The flesh on Hulu's broken arm wriggled. Soon a new arm stretched out. Chen Zhao nodded. Not bad. Looks like I can take a few more hits. Do you want to see more power? Hulu smiled arrogantly, the mane on his body growing crazily. His body arched forward slightly, and a pair of demon horns grew out of his forehead. The aura on his body gave everyone a feeling of evil. Very evil. Hulu's looked like a real demon. Of course, from Chen Zhao's point of view, although Hulu's gave off a thick demonic aura, he didn't look like a demon. But he wasn't a demon. Chen Zhao knew demons too well. He also knew their power. Not everyone was suitable to use demon power. Demon power wasn't actually good or evil. It was just that demon power was extremely stimulating. It was like how some people could accept the taste of chili, while others couldn't. Demon power was like chili. But most people in the world were allergic to chili. Only a few people could accept demon power. But their bodies would still change to different degrees. Just like Hulu's before him. Actually, Chen Zhao and Hulu's were similar. They were both beneficiaries of demon power. Of course, he could also be called a victim. Chen Zhao himself had many demon bloodlines. His body had also been modified by demon bloodlines. But there was still a qualitative difference between Chen Zhao and Hulu's. Chen Zhao could control the demon's power. Hulu's stomped and a spiderweb appeared on the concrete floor. Hulu's sharp claws attacked Chen Zhao again. Bang! Hulu's didn't even see Chen Zhao's attack clearly. He felt the bones in his chest shatter completely. His body flew out like a kite with a broken string. The 3 or 4 buildings behind him were smashed into ruins. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Was this really a battle between humans? Why did it feel like 2 human-shaped monsters were fighting each other? Hulu stood up again. He grabbed a piece of reinforced concrete that weighed hundreds of kilograms and threw it at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao blocked the piece of concrete with only one hand. But just then Hulu's real attack came. The moment Chen Zhao's vision was blocked by the reinforced concrete, Hulu's claws swiped at Chen Zhao from behind. But then, the reinforced concrete in front of Chen Zhao shot back and smashed into Hulu's. A few rebars stabbed into Hulu's body, pinning him to a wall. Chapter 2183. Hulu's roared and pulled out the steel bars from his body. Hulu's didn't become weak because of his injuries. Instead, the pain and blood made him even more ferocious. Roar! Hulu's roared. He took a step forward and pounced at Chen Zhao with even greater speed and power. This time Chen Zhao didn't move. He allowed Hulu's claws to land on him. Hulu's claws slashed across Chen Zhao's skin, creating countless sparks. You need to use more strength. Chen Zhao looked at Hulu's emotionlessly. Hulu's roared again and swung another claw at Chen Zhao's head. However, even after shattering the bones in his arm, he still couldn't hurt Chen Zhao at all. Hulu's was shocked. What was wrong with this guy? By now, Chen Zhao had already raised his right palm and pushed Hulu's chest lightly. Hulu's flew out uncontrollably. Hulu stood up again and attacked again. He was sent flying again. 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 This went on for more than 10 times. Chen Zhao's feet finally moved. He strolled toward Hulu's. Hulu's had monster-level recovery abilities. But this didn't mean that he was immortal. After being heavily injured several times, his energy was starting to weaken. You're much weaker than I imagined. Chen Zhao looked at Hulu's calmly. You can't kill me. Hulu's looked at Chen Zhao panting. You can't kill people here. If you kill me, you'll be in even more trouble. I can't kill participants of the Battle of Holy Glory, but you're not a participant. Looking at Hulu's, Chen Zhao said, plus you broke the rules. You provoked the participants and even approached them. So it's reasonable for me to kill you. Chen Zhao reached out and pressed down on Hulu's. Originally, Chen Zhao wanted to kill him. But in the next instant, Hulu's disappeared. But his aura was still there. Chen Zhao turned around and saw someone carrying Hulu's. The person had a mustache and was dressed in colorful clothes. There were 7 other people beside him. Marfa tossed Hulu's onto the ground. I was wondering why you didn't come back for so long. Marfa glanced at Hulu's on the ground. Fortunately, we came back to take a look. Otherwise, you would have died here today. This guy is very powerful, very powerful. Hira stood up again with the help of his companion's quick healing. Chen Zhao narrowed his eyes and looked at Marfa and the others. Including Hulu's, there were 9 people in total. Are you with him? Sir, how should I address you? Marfa looked at him gently. At the same time, he muttered to himself. To be able to beat Hulu's up like this, his strength is definitely not ordinary. But no matter how hard he thought, he couldn't figure out Chen Zhao's background. China? Dongying? Spiritualists from these 2 places were the most likely suspects. The possibility of it being Wuxia was higher. However, he had more or less recorded the outstanding younger generation of the prestigious families in Wuxia on his list. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't find anyone that matched the person in front of him. I'll tell you if I win, Chen Zhao said indifferently. Marfa, let me teach him a lesson. What an arrogant little fellow. Marfa was also amused by his words. Sir, do you know what you're saying? Of course. Chen Zhao nodded with a smile. You're all going to die here today. Are you kidding? That must be it. Ha, you're so funny. Marfa chuckled. No, I'm serious. Look at my expression. Am I serious? Maybe you don't know who I and my subordinates are, so it's not your fault. But your ignorance will bring you disaster. Suddenly, a murderous glint appeared in Marfa's eyes. Instantly, Chen Zhao felt his body being pulled by an invisible force. However, the force wasn't very strong. At least, it wasn't strong enough to shake Chen Zhao. Surprise flashed in Marfa's eyes. His displacement spell didn't work on the person before him? Has it started? Chen Zhao looked around. He couldn't tell who had done it. He didn't even know what the spell was used for. It shouldn't be weak. However, most of the power was weakened by his non-elemental body. Then, the effect on him was minimal. Looks like your magic resistance is very high, Marfa said calmly. Although Chen Zhao had dispelled his best move, Marfa didn't think much of it. The displacement spell wasn't all he had. It wasn't his trump card either. He had too many spells to counter his enemies. Maybe I should be more serious. Marfa lifted his right arm. He wore a string of colorful gems on his right wrist. The string of jewels began to shine brilliantly. Gravity 1,000 times, Marfa yelled. Terrifying magic power was released from his body. Whoosh! Everyone could feel the terrifying magic power from Marfa. It attacked everyone's soul like a tsunami. The members of the Grey Society, an Alps alliance, paled in fear. The mustached man was scarier than the beast-like spiritualist. They could all see how terrifying it was. Just the amount of mana that he released was 10 times more than the combined mana of the 2 teams. They couldn't imagine how terrifying it would be if he went all out. In an instant, the ground around Chen Zhao shattered. However, Chen Zhao was still standing there unharmed. Marfa's expression became even more astonished. Gravity spells couldn't be nullified or counteracted by magic resistance. Gravity spells were actually physical attacks. So no matter how high one's magic resistance was, they couldn't be nullified. However, the Asian before them didn't seem to be affected at all. Perhaps it wasn't completely unaffected. He might not be able to move now. Huaimi, use your strongest power to destroy him, Marfa said. Chen Zhao saw a beautiful woman walk in front of him. Electricity flashed on the woman called Huaimi. Goodbye. A strong electric current crackled in the air. Everyone could smell something burning. It was caused by the interaction between electricity and air. The terrifying high-voltage electricity turned into a flood and engulfed Chen Zhao. The torrent did not stop flowing and continued to move forward. It seemed like it was going to destroy everything. That was indeed the case. The terrifying electric current destroyed all obstacles along the way, leaving not even a speck of dust. Huaimi clapped her hands. She was always confident in her attacks. Nothing could be preserved in this torrent of lightning. Everything would be evaporated in the flood. Except for her target. Not a bad attack. Chen Zhao stood there unscathed, apart from his slightly burnt clothes. Chapter 2184. It's too early for you to say goodbye. Huaimi's pupils constricted. She saw Chen Zhao raise his right arm. Then she saw a familiar scene. The only difference was that in the past, she'd stood in his position and used her lightning torrent to destroy others. And this time, she was the one being attacked. Watch out! Suddenly, an old man appeared before Huaimi. After the dazzling light, The old man's magic shield shattered. Thankfully, the torrent disappeared too. The members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Union were numb from fear. The battle between the two sides had scared them silly. They'd once thought that they were the top spiritualists in the spiritual world. But now they realized how foolish and ignorant they were in the past. Top. Compared to the people before them, they were as young as babies. Were they going to fight against monsters of this level in the Battle of the Holy Light? Was this a joke? Any one of these people could wipe out their entire team. Chen Zhao rubbed his palms. Please don't try to defeat me in my area of expertise. You better give me some new tricks. Once I lose interest, I won't be able to resist killing you. Suddenly, Chen Zhao turned around and grabbed a person's head. The person was about to sneak attack Chen Zhao. No one knew how he'd appeared behind Chen Zhao. But Chen Zhao knew and seized the opportunity. For example, this type. It's really boring. Crack. Chen Zhao crushed the person's head. Marfa and his men's expressions changed. One of their friends was killed just like that? Chen Zhao shook the flesh off his hand. Marfa's expression grew colder. He couldn't be as calm and at ease as before. Go all out. Don't hold back, Marfa ordered. Everyone moved in an instant, including Huluz, who'd just been cured. Huluz turned into a ferocious beast and pounced at Chen Zhao. Gravity. 10,000 times. Huluz's weight suddenly increased by 10,000 times, but he couldn't bear the force himself. Huluz pressed down on Chen Zhao with an overwhelming force. Chen Zhao reached out and blocked Huluz's attack. But this time he didn't push Huluz away. Huluz couldn't move his body either. Although Marfa's gravity spell wasn't targeted at him, but it was actually taking effect on him. That was why Huluz felt like he had been filled with cement. Flame prison. The old man who'd blocked Chen Zhao's lightning counterattack cast a spell at him. Chen Zhao was immediately engulfed in flames. However, the next moment, the flames were sucked into Chen Zhao's mouth. After brewing it in his mouth, he sprayed it at the old man with an even more intense and scorching impact. Bang! After the violent explosion, there was nothing left of the old man. I've said it before. Give me something fresh, or it'll be the day you die. At this moment, Marfa finally realized. The man in front of him was not ignorant. He just didn't want to know about them. If he and his subordinates still held the same arrogant and contemptuous attitude as before, it was very likely that he would be killed by this man. At this moment, a witch on Marfa's left pressed her palms against the ground. Alec Chui Xin, show yourselves. At this moment, two huge magic arrays appeared in front of the witch. Two colossal dragons emerged from the two magic arrays. One was a black dragon, and the other was a purple dragon. But when Chen Zhao saw the purple dragon, he was stunned. He felt that he'd seen this purple dragon somewhere before. But the moment the purple dragon saw Chen Zhao, the scales on its neck stood up. Cancel my summon, hurry up and cancel my summon. Damn idiot. Chui Xin roared crazily. Crazy. She was really going crazy. Was the world so small? How did she end up in front of this human after so many twists and turns? The other black dragon called Alec didn't think much of it. Chui Xin, you're my summoned beast now. You better listen to my orders. Hurry up and kill this guy. Kill him. You idiots. This guy killed a dozen dragons, including 2 father dragons. If you want to be enemies with him, don't drag me to death. Chui Xin was about to break down. Everyone was shocked by Chui Xin's words. Killed a dozen dragons? Everyone looked at Chen Zhao differently. Ah, I remember now. You're the dragon that escaped. Chen Zhao grinned. I'm so lucky. I didn't think we'd meet again. This time we can finally settle our scores. Human, I don't want to be enemies with you, and I have no intention of doing so. Plus, I'm a guardian of the Celestial Masters sect now. You can't kill me. Are you kidding? You're a guardian of the Celestial Masters sect? I'm not lying. I'm a guardian of the Celestial Masters sect. Fine, for old Zhang's sake, Chen Zhao said calmly. Piss off. He still had to give Zhang Tianyi face. At least, he didn't plan on falling out with Zhang Tianyi. But the other black dragon wasn't so lucky. At least his background wasn't big enough. I've killed a black dragon. You're the second one. Alec also grew nervous. He'd laughed at Chui Xin's cowardice. But after hearing Chui Xin's words, he found it ridiculous. Now that Chen Zhao was staring at him, he felt his hair stand on end. Human, do you think I'm scared of you? You should be. Chen Zhao moved. In an instant he appeared above Alec's head. Alec couldn't even find Chen Zhao. Suddenly, he felt a pain in his head and lost consciousness. Chen Zhao smashed Alec's head heavily. The huge black dragon's head smashed onto the ground, shattering into pieces. Everyone was silent. What had just happened? Did that guy kill a black dragon in an instant? At that moment, Marfa's group, the Ashen Society, and the Alps Alliance were all shocked. Retreat. Scatter and run. Marfa made a prompt decision. Even 10 lives wouldn't be enough to fight against such a guy. It was better to run as soon as possible. Right now, Marfa didn't think that they had a chance of winning. Running was the wisest choice. Leaving one's back to the enemy on the battlefield was the stupidest choice. Facing an undefeatable enemy, fighting to the end was the stupidest choice. Cui Xin wasn't in a good state. She knew how terrifying Chen Zhao was. Chapter 2185. But when Marfa wanted to escape, it was too late. A black screen rose within a radius of several thousand meters. The dark lava completely covered the area. Everyone felt like their heads were going to explode. No one can escape. Smiling, Chen Zhao looked at Marfa and the others. They didn't have any intention to fight at all. The difference in power between them and Chen Zhao was too obvious. There was no suspense in the battle, even though they knew that they would all die if they didn't fight. But knowing it was one thing, and doing it was another thing. Everyone looked at Chen Zhao solemnly. Indecision was written all over their faces. Fight. Or not fight. At this moment, the people outside the dark lava also saw the black screen. What's happening there? I don't know, but I know it's dangerous. So it's better if we don't go over. It's the president. Jalanash exclaimed. The others saw the black screen too. He's here too. Gaia asked, confused. I wonder who the president's opponent is. I'm afraid it's that person. Maybe that group of people. West's expression was complicated. He felt like he'd gotten his revenge. But on the other hand, he also felt that it was a pity. That person was undoubtedly very powerful. He'd brought great humiliation to them. But on the other hand, he'd also given them great motivation. There were pros and cons to this encounter. But now, if that person met Chen Zhao, he probably wouldn't be able to wait for the day they could take revenge. Huluz was indeed very powerful. However, Huluz was far from reaching the level of a monster in their hearts. In their minds, there was only one person who was a monster. That was their president, Chen Zhao. They knew Chen Zhao too well. Similarly, they didn't know where Chen Zhao's limit was. It was just like the huge black screen in the distance. How much magic power did he need to maintain such a terrifying screen? Almost everyone in Desolate Town could see the black screen, but not many dared to approach it. After all, it was too scary. When Marfa and the others went all out, only then did they truly realize how big the gap between them and Chen Zhao was. They could have fought back and forth a few times, but when they became serious, Chen Zhao also became serious. Every time they attacked, they would be met with a counterattack that could topple mountains and overturn seas. Looks like you don't have any new tricks. Chen Zhao's tone was filled with disappointment. Marfa and the others had never been humiliated like this. In the past, they were all looked up to by others. But now, they were like children being pressed against the ground by a strong man. Cui Xin suddenly felt lucky, although she was also an enemy this time. But he didn't have to face Chen Zhao. He was really too lucky, even if she was summoned by his enemy. However, this summoning was not mandatory. After all, the other party did not have the strength to force her to obey his orders. In fact, this kind of summoning was even a request and acceptance. It was an equal contract. Therefore, no one owed anyone anything. So now she could be a bystander. Of course, what was even more fortunate was that she had a powerful backer, the Celestial Master Sect of Mount Longhu. Without the protection of Longhu Mountain's Celestial Master Sect, Chen Zhao probably wouldn't care which side she was on. It was likely that they would directly settle the old and new grudges between them. Then you can all die. Instantly, Marfa and the others felt Chen Zhao's murderous intent. Everyone couldn't help but use their strongest defensive spells. Even the members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance used their defensive spells at the same time. The murderous intent was released indiscriminately. Is the first. The first to die was the spiritualist who had summoned Cui Xiyin. She was killed by Chen Zhao. Even though she used a defensive spell, it was still useless. The second. It was the spiritualist who had the power of lightning. In the same instant, they couldn't resist at all. Chen Zhao made them feel like they were suffocating. This was a disaster, a nightmare. The third, the fourth, the sixth, only Marfa and Huluz were left. The entire process took less than 5 seconds. All the negative emotions surged into their hearts. The Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance were so scared that they didn't dare to make a sound. It was as if they were worried that Chen Zhao would notice them. Why? Why do you want to kill us? We don't even know you. Huluz roared. His voice was hoarse as if he was begging. You don't know me? Unfortunately, the dragon tooth on your neck belongs to my friends, and you killed them. Chen Zhao smiled at Huluz. That's right, Huluz said. They're not dead. I didn't kill them. Huluz said hurriedly. None of them died. I see. Chen Zhao suddenly retracted his murderous intent. He lowered his head and muttered to himself. Huluz and Marfa were so nervous that they broke out in cold sweat. Suddenly, Chen Zhao lifted his head. I still want to kill you. As he spoke, Huluz felt an overwhelming pressure assaulting him. Ah! Huluz could only cry out in pain. Chen Zhao's fist smashed into his body with unstoppable force. Huluz's body felt like it was being bombarded by a large caliber cannon. He turned into minced meat and flew out. Marfa's pupils constricted. It's here. Chen Zhao was already closing in on him. Marfa felt that his thoughts had completely frozen. He couldn't react at all. It was a pressure that surpassed his body and mind. Suddenly, a beam of light broke through the cover formed by the dark lava and shot toward Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao looked up and took 2 steps back. The beam of light landed on the ground before him. Then a figure stood before Chen Zhao and Marfa. Zhang Tianyi. Surprised, Chen Zhao tilted his head and looked at Zhang Tianyi. Old Zhang, you better give me an explanation. When the others saw Zhang Tianyi, their expressions changed. The members of the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance almost knelt on the ground. Marfa was panting like a bull. He almost thought that he was going to die. But who would have thought that the person who was the least likely to save him in the world would actually save him? Don't tell me he's your man too. No, Zhang Tianyi said. Actually, I don't know him at all, but he's still useful. Old Zhang, you're making things difficult for me. Chen Zhao's expression was troubled. Just because he's still useful, you took my enemy away from me? Isn't that too casual? I'll arrange a project for you later, Zhang Tianyi said. It's useless for me to know the project in advance. I still like my subordinates to fight fairly with the experts instead of playing tricks. Chen Zhao's expression was stern and righteous. Chapter 2186. Zhang Tianyi put his hands behind his back and smiled. He really can't die. Name your condition. As long as it's reasonable, I'll try my best to satisfy you. Haha, when you said those words, you were already very insincere. Chen Zhao scratched his nose and pointed at Cui Xiyin. I've already let her go. Are you going to steal another prey from me? I don't want to, but he's really important. I need to get some information from him. Zhang Tianyi said helplessly. How about this? You choose between her and him. No matter how stupid the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance were, they could tell. Chen Zhao and Zhang Tianyi were clearly on the same level. Otherwise, he wouldn't have spoken in such a tone. It was said that there were some old monsters in Wuxia that had the ability to rejuvenate. Perhaps the young man in front of him was an old monster in disguise. Cui Xiyin was devastated. She had thought that she had escaped death. He didn't expect it to be used as a bargaining chip to threaten Zhang Tianyi. Zhang Tianyi might be able to stop him, but he couldn't protect 2 people in front of Chen Zhao. Protect Trish, or protect Marfa. Zhang Tianyi sighed. Marfa was indeed very important, but it wasn't important enough for him to abandon his own people. It was just as Chen Zhao had threatened. He could not protect both Trish and Marfa at the same time. Of course, he understood Chen Zhao. When Chen Zhao said that he would choose him, it meant that he could back off. When a person really wanted to kill the other party, no one could stop him. Zhang Tianyi didn't think he could stop Chen Zhao. If Zhang Tianyi wanted to kill someone close to Chen Zhao wouldn't be able to stop him either. They almost didn't need to do anything. They just had to let go of their hands and feet and fight. The aftermath of the battle could kill the people around them. Come to Dragon Tiger Mountain when you're free. I have a lot of good stuff there. Zhang Tianyi smiled at him. In his heart he said, "Brat, that's enough. I've already taken such a step back. You brat know when to stop." However, Zhang Tianyi's answer was still not enough to satisfy him. This kind of empty promise is meaningless. Chen Zhao didn't believe Zhang Tianyi's promise. Or rather, they didn't believe in Zhang Tianyi's credibility. Does this old man have credibility? What's more, he was now threatening him for benefits. If he really went to Mount Longhu to get his reward, he wouldn't be able to do so. It might be sending a lamb into the tiger's mouth. Don't talk about morality. Zhang Tianyi was a shrewd old man. His morality was self-interest first, followed by moral bottom line. Just say it. What do you want? Chen Zhao looked at Zhang Tianyi. That depends on how sincere you are. Marfa was furious that he was being used as a bargaining chip. However, there was more helplessness and fear. In this negotiation, he did not even have the right to choose. He didn't even have the right to speak. Zhang Tianyi rummaged in his pocket. He took out a scroll and tossed it to Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao took a look. Grand Emperor of Heaven's True Scripture of Taoist Techniques. Just the name alone was quite intimidating. However, he didn't even know if it would be useful to him. What's this? Chen Zhao tried to open it but couldn't. If he forcefully tore it open, he would only damage the scroll. What the hell? This is a Tao law that only the sect master of our Longhu Mountain Celestial Master sect can come into contact with. Be careful with your words. Zhang Tianyi said with a black face. How do I open it? Figure it out yourself. Don't tell me you can't even handle such a small matter? Zhang Tianyi said, looking at Chen Zhao with a playful gaze. He loved to see Chen Zhao embarrassed. In the end, he had no choice but to beg Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao tossed the scroll in the air. Do I have to figure it out myself? I just need to send out a message, and whoever opens it for me can make a copy. There's no limit to the number of times. I don't believe that no one can open it with so many spiritualists in the world. Zhang Tianyi kept glaring at Chen Zhao. He didn't expect Chen Zhao to be so shameless. He already regretted giving him such an important heavenly scripture of Taoist techniques. At first, Zhang Tianyi thought that even if Chen Zhao took the Taoist technique of Longhu Mountain Celestial Master Sect, he would at most comprehend the profound realms within, and not learn the spells inside. He didn't expect Chen Zhao to trick him directly. I'll remove the seal on it later. Zhang Tianyi was so angry that his nose was crooked, but he could only pinch his nose and accept it. The item was in Chen Zhao's hands, and he was the one who gave it away. It was almost impossible for him to take it back. Fine, I'll leave him to you. Chen Zhao let Marfa go easily, but before he left he added, Oh, after you ask what you need to ask, you can give him back to me. How about that? Zhang Tianyi's face darkened. Chen Zhao was tricking him. Hearing that, Marfa found it even harder to speak. He was going to die either way. How could Marfa be willing to speak? Piss off. Chen Zhao turned around and left grinning. But he stopped before the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance. You didn't see anything today. Nothing happened. Do you understand? If I hear anything about what happened today, I'll throw your friends, families, and organizations into the Pacific Ocean to feed the dogs. The people from the Ashen Society and the Alps Alliance paled in fear. Are there dogs in the Pacific Ocean? Zhang Tianyi asked. Fur seals. Can't I? Chen Zhao touched the black cover. Not long after, Bifla appeared beside Chen Zhao. I thought you'd fight with Celestial Master Zhang. Bifla's tone was rather disappointed. He didn't hide his thoughts at all. He knew Chen Zhao's abilities. Chen Zhao had a realm that he couldn't reach in 400 years. It was also Zhang Tianyi's realm. He really wanted to learn something from Chen Zhao and Zhang Tianyi's battle. Unfortunately, Chen Zhao and Zhang Tianyi didn't have a reason to fight. Of course, it might also be because they were wary of each other. How about we fight? Chen Zhao glanced at Bifla. I'm not stupid. There's at least a realm difference between us. You're already undefeatable in this battle. But your strange and miraculous magic is something I can't hope to achieve. Those spells can stall for time, but they can't win. Bifla had a clear understanding of himself. He might be proud and arrogant, but he wasn't arrogant. He wouldn't blindly think that he was undefeatable. When did you come? Probably when you went downstairs, Bifla said. Do you know who those people are? Yes, Bifla answered. Who are they? Divine Emperor of the Nine Heavens. Chapter 2187. They're generally bad people, Bifla said calmly. They've done all the bad things you can think of. Most of the time, no matter what kind of evil it was, it could be summarized as a bad person. Chen Zhao and Bifla continued to stroll around the desolate market. They would stay and watch the battles. The first trial lasted for 24 hours before it finally ended. During this time, Chen Zhao saw the association's team. But Chen Zhao didn't show himself. After confirming that they were fine, Chen Zhao left the vicinity of the association's team. When Chen Zhao and Bifla left the desolate market, the first stage had officially ended. It felt great to be back in the modern world. That was how Chen Zhao felt. Bifla didn't show it. But he had the same feeling. Maybe it was a different space like the real world. But that gray and gloomy environment, that kind of emptiness and silence brought great pressure to people. Chen Zhao didn't like that feeling. No normal person would. The familiar sunlight, air and passers-by. This was what normal people liked. Let's go get a drink, Chen Zhao said. Oh, doesn't the fire worship sect abstain from alcohol? No. Chen Zhao and Bifla found a roadside pub. There are many such roadside pubs in Turkey. Many Turks like to sit in these roadside pubs and drink beer in the afternoon. Chen Zhao and Bifla both enjoyed the afternoon. Just then, a familiar figure entered Chen Zhao's field of vision. Li Xian. Of course, Chen Zhao only knew her online username, Little Xinshin. Li Xian was broadcasting on the streets of Istanbul. Li Xian talked non-stop. Suddenly, her phone on the selfie stick beeped with a message. While broadcasting, Li Xian looked at the messages from the corner of her eye. These messages were all private messages sent to her by her fans. At the same time, she also saw the comments in the live stream. The live stream was filled with "Look at the asterisk shoal." Look at the asterisk shoal? What was this? Li Xian was confused. She didn't know what was going on. Chen Zhao also didn't know that he'd become popular in Li Xian's live stream. Basically, the viewers who watched Li Xian's live stream for a long time all knew who Chen Zhao was. Some people even suspected that Li Xian had hired someone. Li Xian suddenly saw Chen Zhao sitting at a table by the roadside. Li Xian was in a bad mood. Chen Zhao even waved enthusiastically at Li Xian to greet her. Chen Zhao smiled brightly. It was as if he had met a friend that he had not seen for a long time. However, Li Xian didn't look so happy. She and Chen Zhao were on the same flight to Istanbul. But she felt that her fate with Chen Zhao had basically come to an end. Especially at the airport, when she saw Chen Zhao and his men drag a group of people into the corridor and beat them up. She kept her distance from Chen Zhao, indicating that she couldn't afford to offend him. Chen Zhao was definitely not a good person. At least, he wasn't the kind that she knew. She even imagined that Chen Zhao was some big boss of a gang. Thus, she really didn't want to meet him again. Next to Chen Zhao was a man wearing Central Asian clothing. Li Xian couldn't help but imagine what kind of illegal transaction was going on. I can feel that the woman knows you. And her brain is working at high speed. And her body is over-secreting dopamine. There are only two possibilities for this situation. One is that she is extremely excited, and the other is that she is in a state of extreme panic. Bifla looked at Chen Zhao. What did you do to her? I won $500,000 from her, Chen Zhao said. Really? Bifla stared at Chen Zhao suspiciously. What do you think I can do to her? She's just a normal person. The rules of the spiritual world might not apply to you, Bifla said honestly. You've never been one to follow the rules. There had always been a rule in the spiritual world, not to harass normal people. But this rule only applied to regular spiritualists. It didn't apply to people like Chen Zhao and Bifla, whose status and power were already extraordinary. In ancient times, they could just find a slightly remote place. If they made up a doctrine, they could be worshipped as gods. Whether it was the rules of the spiritual world, or the laws of the normal world, they were already very weak on them. For example, if a criminal stood before them, the laws of the normal world first talked about evidence. But they didn't need evidence. When they thought that the other was a criminal, they would punish the other in the way they thought was right. You sound like you know me very well. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. While Chen Zhao and Bifla were teasing each other, Li Xian had already walked over. Li Xian was helpless too, because of the requests from the bosses in the broadcast room. She came over to greet Chen Zhao. "Hello, can I sit here?" Li Xian asked in fluent English. Her tone was rather polite. Before Chen Zhao could reply, Bifla spoke first. "Please sit. Mr. Chen, we meet again. You don't look very happy about our reunion," Chen Zhao said directly. Chen Zhao said directly, "Kids in the live stream, are you still gritting your teeth at me? Do you really want to buy a plane ticket to Istanbul to beat me up? Unfortunately, I'll be staying in Istanbul for a long time. But you definitely won't have a chance to beat me. Plus, you definitely can't beat me." Under Chen Zhao's provocation, the comments in the broadcast room exploded. "Seeing how you want to beat me to death, but can't do anything to me really makes me happy." Actually, most of the viewers in the broadcast room knew that Chen Zhao was rich. Basically, no one had anything better to do than to find Chen Zhao to practice martial arts. But in the broadcast room, no one would be serious with them anyway. Li Xian saw that the situation wasn't good. If Chen Zhao continued to cause trouble, the broadcast room would really be banned. There were rules from the higher-ups. Streamers weren't allowed to verbally attack or provoke the audience. Even if the streamer didn't do it on purpose, Chen Zhao's behavior was still not allowed in the broadcast room. Chen Zhao's various arrogant actions did bring some popularity to the broadcast room, but the side effects were also very obvious. "Sir, how should I address you?" Li Xian asked. "Gunbi Bifla." "Hello, Mr. Gunbi." Just then the broadcast room exploded again. Actually, the ones who exploded were the bosses in the broadcast room. Many of them knew Bifla, or rather the name, Gunbi Bifla, a super rich man in Central Asia. Chapter 2188. A super tycoon who didn't rely on oil to become one of the wealthiest people in Central Asia. Gunbi Bifla had only been known by the rich people in China since last year. Gunbi Bifla's Sun Group had collaborated with the richest company in China, Wuxia Group. They had invested more than $130 billion. They had collaborated on more than 50 projects. Of course, this news was quite sensational in the business world. But not many ordinary people knew about it. Therefore, Gunbi Bifla wasn't famous among ordinary people. But among the wealthy, Gunbi Bifla's reputation was rather high. "No way. Is this guy really Gunbi Bifla? It can't be, right? It can't be a random actor, right? He's wearing the local costume and calls himself Gunbi Bifla. Is he really that super tycoon?" Li Xian glanced at the comments in the live broadcast room. In fact, she didn't know how Gunbi Bifla could make the bosses in the live broadcast room explode. Just then, a huge tip floated across the live broadcast room. The person who had tipped Li Xian was none other than the boss of the live broadcast platform. Of course, he had another identity, the son of the richest man in China. He's the real Gunbi Bifla. I've seen him at my dad's party. This bullet screen was too eye-catching and eye-catching. Everyone in the live broadcast room saw it. Instantly, the live broadcast room exploded. All sorts of dirty comments floated across the room. If the two of them were actors, they were probably the most expensive actors in history. Most people with a clear mind understood. With Li Xian's status, it was impossible for her to hire Gunbi Bifla. Chen Zhao glanced at the comments. "Bifla, you seem to be quite famous. If you spend a few $1 billion, you can be famous too." "I can't do that. I don't have that much money." Chen Zhao's current net worth was only a little over $10 billion. Of course, the beer brand still had a lot of room for growth and profit. Denver, the person in charge of the brewery, would tell Chen Zhao about people who wanted to buy the brewery and beer brand every month when he did the financial report. Perhaps Dashin Beer's valuation wasn't as high as a first-tier company, but its profitability might not even be as high as a first-tier company. For example, those famous internet companies. For comparison, the world's largest search engine only made $1 billion in a quarter. Furthermore, Dashenbeer's quarterly profits had crushed this network technology company. Chen Zhao's net worth might not even be in Forbes' top 10, but that didn't mean they were richer than him. In terms of cash flow, even the richest person in the world might not be able to compare to Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao's money was rotting in the bank. Everyone knew that 99% of the world's currencies were depreciating, including the US dollar. But Chen Zhao really didn't understand finance. If a dabbler like Chen Zhao was allowed to invest in finance, that would not be a loss but a squandering. Therefore, the only thing he could do was to deposit the money in Citibank, and then sign a high-interest contract with them. In fact, almost every tycoon and bank had similar contracts. With $1 million, he could negotiate with the bank for a higher interest rate. Plus, he had a professional manager to help him invest. Of course, those investments were the most reliable fund investments. Their profitability was only slightly higher than the bank's interest. Li Xian looked at the bullet screen in the live broadcast room and roughly understood. The man in the traditional clothes of Central Asia was not a terrifying tycoon. Instead, he was a true super-rich man. I heard this guy won $500,000 from you? Bifla asked, pointing at Chen Zhao. Li Xian's face darkened. He really touched her sore spot. This was a dark history that she didn't want to mention. To her, it was definitely not a small amount. Moreover, the RMB had been changed to dollars. How about we play a game? If you can win, I'll give you $1 million, Bifla said, smiling. Game? What game? Instinctively, Li Xian wanted to reject. Her first reaction was that this super-rich man wouldn't make an outrageous request in front of millions of viewers. Would he? Smiling, Bifla took out a credit card and placed it on the table. Then he pushed it to Li Xian. Mr. Gunbai, I don't understand. What does this mean? This credit card is anonymous and has no password. You can swipe it however you want. If you can swipe the card's overdraft limit, and it doesn't exceed $1,000, then you win. I'll give you $1 million. Li Xian didn't take the credit card. Instead, she looked up and asked, I don't understand. What's the point of this competition? Also, I don't think I have any chance of winning. Actually, it's not that you have no chance of winning. You have a huge fan base, so you can ask them for advice. This card isn't a rare type of card. You can determine the card's limit and upper limit based on the type of card. It might seem like I'm asking you to squander your money, but in fact this competition still requires some skill. Bifla added, I only have one rule, and that is you can't check the upper limit of this card. As for the other methods that you and your fans can think of, you can try them. Mr. Gunbai, I still don't understand why you're doing this. You can think of it as the bad taste of rich people. Bifla glanced at Chen Zhao beside him. Chen Zhao shrugged helplessly. That's your bad taste. I'm not. In my eyes, you're not rich either. Bifla's words ignited Chen Zhao's anger. You have more assets. Do you dare to compete with cash? The live stream was filled with joy. On one hand, Chen Zhao had lost. On the other hand, they were jeering. Haha, you dare to compete with the richest people in Central Asia? You've got guts. In this era, cash is the most worthless thing, Bifla said. Bifla said, only substantial assets or stocks can truly represent your net worth. So you admit defeat? Chen Zhao asked mockingly. Bifla had never been a broad-minded person. Do you really want to compete? Whoever's a coward is a coward. How much cash do you have? No matter how much you have, I can take out more cash than you. Chen Zhao was unprecedentedly confident in this aspect. Do you know how many listed companies I control? I don't know how many you control, but I'm sure that the total amount of money in your company's accounts isn't as much as mine. I can raise at least $3 billion. Then you lose. The viewers in the live stream were unhappy. These two guys were better at bragging than the other. But they didn't fight for real. Even though the numbers they mentioned were astronomical figures. But the key was that they were only moving their mouths. No one had seen that money before. Mobile version of the fastest.d website. Chapter 2189. Forget it, Bifla suddenly said. I'm not as vulgar as you. Chen Zhao gritted his teeth. This guy knew that his cash flow couldn't compare to Chen Zhao's. He directly rejected with such a high-sounding excuse. The audience in the broadcast room was so happy that they couldn't even find direction. But now, no one wanted to cause trouble for Chen Zhao. After all, he could joke with Bifla in such a tone. He should be a rich and powerful person on the same level as Bifla. They didn't know if Chen Zhao could really take out more cash than Bifla, but they were sure that most of the people in the broadcast room, or maybe everyone's wealth wasn't as much as these two. They felt helpless that the two were showing off their wealth. Mr. Gunby, let's forget about our bet, Li Xian said. Why? My broadcast room is a positive one. This bet will make people think that I'm showing off. Li Xian knew that the country's current policy was to purify the internet. It was against vulgarity and vulgarity. Li Xian didn't want to use her head to test the bottom line of the platform and policy. She usually did relatively positive live broadcasts. Fine, I won't make things difficult for you. Bifla readily accepted Li Xian's explanation. Li Xian secretly heaved a sigh of relief. She wasn't as persistent as she looked. If Bifla really wanted to force her, she might give in. Plus, she already knew that Bifla was a super rich man. He was on the same level as the richest man in China. She couldn't afford to offend him. If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Goodbye, Mr. Gunby. Goodbye. Li Xian didn't plan on building a relationship with Bifla. Li Xian's mind was always clear. If the other party was a superstar or a famous person, she might put down her pride to suck up to the other party, or gain popularity. But the other party was a super rich man. They weren't from the same world. No matter how Li Xian sucked up to him, they wouldn't have any chance to continue talking. Bifla waved his hand. Goodbye. Li Xian ran for her life. Smart girl. How smart can a small internet celebrity be? Chen Zhao's tone clearly showed his disdain for Li Xian. I don't have anything in common with you. Bifla rolled his eyes. Li Xian hurriedly left. Little Xinxin, why are you in such a hurry to leave? Yeah, I think that super rich guy is quite approachable. They are all big shots. No matter how much I interact with them, I won't become a big shot. Instead, I might become their plaything. For example, just now, that Mr. Gunby was making fun of me. Although little Xinxin, I don't have much money. I don't want to be played by them. What a pity. I'd be happy to be a monkey for such a big shot. There were also a few keyboard warriors with unfriendly tones, saying that Li Xian was pretending to be virtuous. This was unavoidable. As the old saying goes, when the forest is big, there are all kinds of birds. Li Xian was used to ignoring these keyboard warriors. Let's continue our previous live stream. However, there was no longer that small interlude. The following live broadcast also became somewhat dull and boring. Li Xian also felt that the fans in the live stream were not in a good mood. After that, he ended the live broadcast in a hurry. Li Xian found a seaside restaurant. Istanbul has very long and high-quality beaches. Although it was January, the weather was slightly cold. But it still couldn't stop tourists from all over the world from coming here to enjoy the beach, sunshine, and beautiful women. Li Xian just found a seat and sat down. Suddenly, she saw a foreigner quietly reaching for an Asian's backpack. What are you doing? Li Xian immediately raised her voice and shouted. The Asian and the foreigner were both stunned for a moment. The Asian immediately grabbed his backpack and looked back at the foreigner standing behind him. What are you doing? TCH. The foreigner snorted and swaggered away. This foreigner was probably a local tyrant. So he was quite arrogant. To him, Li Xian was the foreigner. So he didn't care about being caught on the spot. Of course, no matter how arrogant he was, he wouldn't dare to rob her openly. So the most he could do was leave while cursing. Hello, miss, thank you. The man came to Li Xian. You're welcome. We're all in a foreign country and need to help each other. Li Xian said politely. I wonder if I have the honor to know your name. My name is Li Xian, not Musi Li. It's Li as in dawn, Xian as in prosperity. I'm Zhouang. Are you here to travel? Or are you on a business trip? Li Xian asked. Business trip, Zhouang replied. The two met old friends in a foreign place, so they sat down and had a meal together. Li Xian also learned that Zhou was an employee of a big company. This time, he came to Istanbul with his leader on a business trip. The two chatted happily, and even exchanged contact information. I didn't expect you to be a streamer. If you didn't tell me, I would have thought you were a big star. You flatter a girl the first time you meet her. I guess you've cheated a lot of girls with this trick. I swear to God, I just said it casually. I learned it from books. You're the first girl to let me practice it. In fact, Li Xian felt sweet in her heart. She wasn't the kind of love-struck fool who couldn't move when she saw a man. She also had a certain amount of love experience. But Zhou gave her a very good impression. Zhou was witty and humorous, and his looks were quite elegant. Even Li Xian was a little moved. Of course, it was nonsense to say that it was love at first sight, and she would immediately sacrifice her life for him. But Li Xian felt that Zhou was the type that she could go further with. She just didn't know what Zhou was thinking. Let's go to the coastal park over there. Zhou took the initiative to invite her. He also had a good impression of Li Xian. He was now secretly confirming whether Li Xian was interested in him or not. Now the two only needed to break through the paper window. There were a lot of people on the coast in the evening. The street lights on the coast were already lit. Unconsciously, Li Xian and Zhou hands were already holding each other's hands. It was hard to count who held the other's hand first. However, at that moment, 3 uninvited guests blocked their way. One of them was the thief who wanted to steal from Zhou backpack. The other 2 didn't seem to be the same kind of people as the thief. One of them was wearing a suit and leather shoes, and the other was dressed like a psychic. It's them. It's that man. I feel it. It's on him. At this time, the man in the suit came up and said in English, "Hand over the demon pearl." Chapter 2190. Confused, Li Xian turned to look at Zhou. What demonic pearl? Zhou expression was ugly. He did not answer Li Xian's question. Do you want to fight here? Hurry up. Cut the crap. The man in the suit growled impatiently. It seemed that the 3 of them were very impatient, as if they were in a hurry. You won't make it. Why? You'll be severely punished if you fight here, Zhou said. No matter what, you'll be eliminated. Instead of being eliminated awkwardly, it's better to be calm. At that moment, 2 SUVs stopped beside them. Everyone was stunned. Then a few people jumped out of the car. Li Xian realized that she had met these people on the plane. They seemed to be Chun Zhao's subordinates. They have it on them, Jalanash said. When the 3 and Zhou saw the people in the SUVs, their expressions changed. Without wasting any time, Gaia got out of the car and blocked their way. The 3 wanted to resist, but Gaia beat them down with a few punches and kicks. Then Gaia searched their bodies. An elite blocked Zhou way. Sir, please hand over your things. What do you want? I know your boss. Don't do anything stupid, Li Xian shouted immediately. She did not know what these people had been trying to steal. However, it was clearly immoral and against the law. But they ignored Li Xian's shout. Zhou stood behind Li Xian and formed a seal with both hands. But before he finished forming the hand seal, an elite had already made his move. An elite interrupted Zhou hand seal and pressed him to the ground. He quickly found 2 demonic pearls. Got it. Let's go, an elite said. Zhou, are you okay? Seeing Zhou pressed to the ground, Li Xian immediately turned around and helped him up. The others left too. What did they steal from you? Zhou looked like he was about to cry, but facing Li Xian's question, he shook his head and pretended to be strong. Still, he pretended to be strong and shook his head. It's nothing. Forget it. It's just lost. No, I can't just let it go like this. I know who they are. I'll get them back for you. No, there's no need. Zhou grabbed Li Xian's wrist. That thing is not very important. Are you sure you don't need to call the police? Zhou smiled bitterly. He didn't know how to explain it to Li Xian. Actually, that thing isn't worth much. Then why did they snatch it? Li Xian's face was full of confusion. Suddenly, she seemed to have an epiphany. Could it be an important scientific research result? Or some other data? Let's put it this way. The other 2 groups of people and I are participating in a competition. This competition requires us to collect that thing, and there are requirements for both quantity and quality. After the competition is over, there are still a large number of items that we haven't collected. If this trend continues, then the competition can't continue. So the organizers have given us a certain amount of time. Before 12 o'clock tonight, if we can snatch enough items from other contestants and teams, then we can pass this competition. If we can't reach the required quantity, then we will be considered to have failed, and will be eliminated. What kind of competition is this? So strange. Is it an illegal competition? No, although this competition is relatively private, the government is also involved, Zhou said. That is to say, those two groups of people actually snatched it legally? You can say that. Then, won't it be a problem if your item is snatched? Zhou touched his nose and said with a bitter smile, "It's fine. In fact, my leader and I are acting as bait. Our loot has actually been hidden." What kind of competition is this? It's a battle of wits and courage. Where can I watch the competition? Li Xian was interested. As long as it's not illegal. But why haven't I heard of this competition? Is it a secret competition? Not open to the public. Not completely open to the public. Only a small group of people can watch. What conditions do I have to meet? Do I meet the conditions? Zhou smiled bitterly and shook his head. No. All right. Li Xian hesitated for a moment before saying, "Are those people really not part of a criminal organization? When I saw them at the airport, they had a conflict with a group of men in black. In the end, at a corner, they directly dragged the group of men in black. I saw it with my own eyes. Those men in black that you mentioned should also be contestants of this competition. They can be considered competitors. Is it allowed by the organizers to do dirty tricks outside the competition? I don't support it, but I don't oppose it either. You're not some special forces competition or super agent competition, are you? No, we don't serve the government. In fact, people who serve the government are not allowed to participate, nor can they get an invitation. Anyway, as long as it's not illegal, it's fine." Zhou was secretly happy. He could hear the subtext in Li Xian's words. "I swear, I've never done anything against the law. How many more?" Gaia asked. "Right now, we have a 9-fusion demon pearl, which can be counted as 512 beads. Since we came out of the wasteland market, it's been 6 hours since we got out. We've gotten 3 6-fusion beads and 1 7-fusion demon pearl. If we convert them into beads, that's 832. In other words, we still need 196 beads." After they came out of the first trial, they were informed by the organizers that they did not pass the trial, because the condition to pass the first trial was to hand over a 10-fusion demon pearl, or 1,024 demon pearls, that had not been fused before. And the rules of the organizers made it so that none of the participants or participating teams could pass the first trial. If this continued, almost all the participants and teams would be eliminated. And it was said that only one team could pass the first trial directly. If there was only one team left, there would be no need to carry out the later projects. They could directly announce the result of the Holy Glory battle. This situation had never happened before. So, to make up for it, and to continue the event, the organizers could only slightly change the ending time. The participants and teams came out of the wasteland market at 12 noon. They still had 12 hours. No matter what method was used, whether it was robbing or stealing, in short, they had to gather 1,024 demon pearls, or a 10-fusion demon pearl. That was why they were in this situation now. Now all the participants and teams had gone crazy. They were desperately robbing the demon pearls of other participants and teams. Chapter 2191. Ordinary people didn't notice the difference in this city, but the influence of the spiritual world was huge. Most participants and teams were here for the title of Holy Glory. If their actions harmed ordinary people, or caused a huge impact in the world of ordinary people, they would be eliminated. They might even face even more severe punishments. Thus, no one dared to be stupid now. They were more restrained in front of ordinary people. But for their own kind, they weren't so patient. Plus, most spiritualists were proud. Plus, time was really tight this time. There were only 12 hours in total. Everyone in every team had to do their best. They tried their best to steal from other teams. Some teams would turn around and steal from other teams as soon as they were robbed. Chen Zhao and Baifla were lying on the beach now. It was already early evening, but the two didn't mind. Baifla, shouldn't you find someone else to team up with? Is it fun to follow me all day? Or can't you find someone else to team up with? You should feel honored. Can I say dirty words? I just feel that we have more common topics to talk about. Common topics? Do you have some misunderstanding about yourself? I hope that you can inspire me with your great power. And I have a rich reserve of magic knowledge that can also inspire you. This was why Baifla had been working with Chen Zhao. It wasn't because they shared the same interests, nor was it because they had similar statuses. It was just that Baifla hoped to learn something from Chen Zhao. As for Chen Zhao's feelings, that wasn't in his consideration. Why don't you go pester Zhang Tianyi? Why don't you pester Mary 23? What's the point of pestering me? My advantage isn't obvious before them, Baifla said. Baifla said, based on my observation of you, your magic knowledge is rather poor and monotonous. This is called simple but refined. You don't understand. When you understand this, maybe you'll reach my current level. It was rare for Chen Zhao to act cool. He opened his mouth and acted like he was unfathomable. Unfortunately, Baifla didn't buy it at all. You can't tell me what to do. Your level is high, but your level is low. Baifla mercilessly exposed Chen Zhao's true nature. He was so angry that he wanted to flip the table. If you had this level of comprehension, you wouldn't have been stuck at a bottleneck for so many years. You should just give up. Your talent is too poor. What I lack is luck. Take you for example. Your talent isn't that great, but you're able to grasp such great power. This means that sometimes talent isn't more important than luck. Whether it's talent or luck, I achieved it, but you didn't. This means that I'm better than you. Both of them were trying their best to ridicule and belittle each other. Say whatever you want. It was as if he could find joy in doing so. However, the two of them refused to fall out. Those who didn't know would think that the two of them were good friends. Moreover, this quarrel lasted from evening to early morning. The whole beach was deserted, and they were still arguing. Of course, no one came to chase them away. In fact, there were quite a few people around them. However, they were all Baifla's subordinates. They were all in charge of taking care of Baifla's affairs. At this moment, one of Baifla's subordinates jogged over to Baifla, knelt on one knee, and performed a special greeting. Leader, the results of the first trial are out. Yes. How are my students' results? The young masters have all successfully entered the second round. They're currently ranked third. Third? Who's first and second? Baifla asked. In first place is the Sacred Army led by Mr. Matthew, with a score of 1,820 points. In second place is an unknown team from Wuxia. The team's name has not been disclosed, and they are only 5 points behind the first place. How many points did we get? 1,785 points. How many people entered the second round? Baifla asked. 25 teams and 18 lone wolves. Including the casualties of the teams that advanced, there are 248 people in total. Chen Zhao turned his head and asked, do you have a list? Yes, Mr. Chen. Please wait a moment. Because Chen Zhao and Baifla were of the same generation, Baifla's subordinates were especially respectful to him. A while later, Baifla's subordinate handed Chen Zhao a list. Chen Zhao found West and the others on the list. They were at the bottom, but everyone was here. No one had been injured in the first round and had to leave. The supernatural organization was ranked 21st. They weren't at the bottom, but their results weren't outstanding. They scored 1,150 points. This was a rather dangerous result. They'd passed the first trial with 1,024 points. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't really care about their results. He brought them here with the attitude of learning. Chen Zhao wouldn't be so arrogant as to think that everyone from his family was invincible. After staying in the barren land for so long, Chen Zhao had seen many strong people. The strength of some teams was indeed very strong. Of course, his 10 people wouldn't be so far behind in terms of combat power. At least, Chen Zhao believed that they could be in the top 5. The first trial wasn't just about team combat power. Luck was also a big factor. There was also psychological factors. Bifla glanced at the list in Chen Zhao's hands and couldn't help but laugh. 21st. Looks like your team has to go home in the second round. Do you believe that I'll send your students home right now? Bifla pursed his lips and didn't provoke Chen Zhao anymore. He really couldn't guarantee that Chen Zhao wouldn't do such a despicable thing. The first round's result doesn't mean anything. If you really think that my team isn't that strong, do you dare to have a private round? Chen Zhao was just that arrogant. He'd already seen Bifla's students in the barren land. In terms of combat power, they weren't much stronger than his team. This was why Chen Zhao dared to challenge Bifla. Bifla didn't accept. Our teams don't need to compete. Let's save our energy for the second trial. Also, I think we should work together. At least, we won't suffer any losses in internal conflicts. Chen Zhao thought about it. That seemed to make sense. There was no point in them having fun here. Resting was the most important thing right now. As for the alliance that Bifla suggested, he'd see how it went. Chapter 2192. Oh, there's another piece of news that you should pay attention to, Bifla suddenly said seriously. What news? The people in charge of some teams, the invited guests this time, are up to no good. They've already done something sneakily today. In other words, people like you and me? Sort of, but they don't have my status or your power. What are they doing? Helping their teams get rid of competitors. That's not allowed, right? Of course not. But as long as they don't get caught, the organizers can't do anything to them. You better remind your team. Does that mean I can do the same thing? Bifla was angered by Chen Zhao's words. I'm telling you to remind your team to be careful, not for you to do the same thing. Forget it. Chen Zhao was just saying it casually. He didn't bring his team here to get a good ranking. Instead, he wanted to find out his team's current level. If it was only compared to the North American spiritual world, the supernatural organization was undoubtedly at the top. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were the ruling class. In the North American spiritual world, the supernatural organization wasn't very famous, but their hidden power and power were very great. However, the North American spiritual world was the weakest in the world. Their influence was like the national football team in the entire soccer world. The supernatural organization wasn't on the same level as the entire North American spiritual world. Therefore, the supernatural organization couldn't clearly determine their level. Only by going to a bigger stage and interacting with the spiritual worlds of more regions could they truly understand their own level. Only in this way could he truly raise his level. The supernatural organization was far from the top of the spiritual world in the entire world. Perhaps the 21st place in the first round of the Battle of Holy Glory wasn't the supernatural organization's true ranking, but the ranking was also very telling. My people found another criminal organization. Do you want to join? Bifla asked. We didn't win last time, so let's see who's better this time. What do you think? Sure. After the first time, there wouldn't be any sense of guilt for the second time. Why don't we go in another direction and not use magic? We are competing as assassins. If we only use magic, it will be over in an instant. There is no way to determine a winner in such a competition, Bifla said. Assassin? I've never been an assassin. First of all, we can't let those criminals discover us. All the prey must be killed in close combat. We can't kill more than 3 criminals at once. If there are 4 criminals gathered together, we can't make a move. To Chen Zhao and Bifla, this wasn't a massacre. It was a game. To be honest, Chen Zhao also felt that if they did what they did the first time, hundreds of criminal organizations wouldn't be enough for them to kill at all. Unless they were given an army, this kind of competition would be meaningless. However, Bifla's suggestion and rules added some fun to the game. This was a local criminal group, and this criminal group had its own building. The building was called the South Branch Building, but the locals called it the Sin Building. Chen Zhao and Bifla arrived at the bottom of Sin Tower. The two of them checked the time. Let's begin when you're ready. Then let's begin. However, Bifla didn't start with a massacre. Instead, he sealed off the building's entrance. Then he made a signal jamming device to prevent the criminals from calling for help. The massacre officially began. Even with the various rules and restrictions Bifla had listed, this massacre didn't cause too much trouble for the two of them. It wasn't as convenient and fast as killing them all with a spell. However, a massacre that was similar to a normal person's wasn't something the criminals could stop. Bifla, how many have you killed? You already know the answer. Through the communicator, Bifla's reply was rather cold. Bifla replied like this because he could feel that Chen Zhao was using the small world to monitor him. Of course, Bifla wasn't too honest either. He was also using a spell to monitor Chen Zhao. Huh. 2 more spiritualists. Are they here for the same reason as us? Chen Zhao suddenly realized that 2 spiritualists had come to the building. Moreover, the 2 spiritualists seemed to be moving toward Chen Zhao and Bifla. They're here for us? Chen Zhao asked. I think so. Do you know them? Bifla asked. He also didn't know where the 2 spiritualists came from. Moreover, they seemed to know where Chen Zhao and Bifla were. Chen Zhao and Bifla met up. The 2 spiritualists also changed their route and headed toward where Chen Zhao and Bifla were gathered. The 2 spiritualists didn't hide their tracks. They directly appeared before Chen Zhao and Bifla. One was a tall, skinny man in a black robe. The other had a smile on his face and stood slightly behind the tall, skinny man. The 2 looked at Chen Zhao and Bifla, who were covered in blood. Chen Zhao and Bifla also stared at the 2. Are you here to take revenge for these people? Bifla's drooping arms were dripping with blood. Of course, the blood wasn't his. It was inevitable that there would be blood in a close fight. No, the tall, skinny man said calmly. Are you professional killers? Or just bloodthirsty? Chen Zhao and Bifla exchanged glances. They didn't understand the tall, skinny man's intentions. What did he mean? Didn't they realize that Bifla and Chen Zhao were spiritualists? Just tell me why you're here. Do you want more killing? I can give you more kills and prey. Of course, if you need money, that's not a problem either. Chen Zhao and Bifla exchanged glances again. It was because of their game that the 2 people in front of them had misunderstood. Did they think they were ordinary killers? Then, they wanted to pull them into their group and become their thugs. The 2 exchanged glances. This seemed to be an interesting new game. Both could see the interest in each other's eyes. Now was the time to test their acting skills. What makes you think you can give us more killing? To me, you're just 2 transvestite perverts. Ha! Maybe you should reintroduce yourself to me, Dark Warlock Ruik Des. Instantly, a terrifying black aura exploded from Ruik Des's body. In a few seconds, the black aura filled the entire crime building. All the criminals were instantly killed by the black aura. Bookmark for easier reading. Chapter 2193. Death Aura. Chen Zhao's eyes widened. What a massive death aura. For example, Helis had obtained a ball of death aura, and it was still one of her main attacks. The guy before him, Ruik Des, had more than 100 times more death aura than Helis. Do you feel the shock from my power? Ruik Des shouted condescendingly. This is a real massacre. Your massacre is too inefficient and too low-end. Who are you? Chen Zhao pretended to be shocked. Your expression is too exaggerated. Bifla's voice rang in Chen Zhao's ears. But he didn't let Ruik Des hear him. Me? I have many names. Grim Reaper Demon Undead Gonling. Undead Gonling? You're Undead Gonling? Bifla suddenly looked up at Ruik Des. He'd clearly heard of this name, or rather a title. Chen Zhao was very confused. When Ruik Des saw that Bifla had heard of this name, he became even more proud. Yes, I'm Undead Gonling. Chen Zhao tilted his head and looked at the 2. What was so special about this name? Undead Gonling appeared in the 50s of the last century. He first appeared in Western Europe. Some people were digging graves and stealing corpses. What really made this name famous was a gravekeeper. The gravekeeper discovered a figure digging a grave. Just as he was about to stop it, he discovered that the figure's face was rotting. This was a huge commotion at the time. Did you do it? I remember this. It was just a small prank, but I didn't expect that this small prank would make me famous. You look younger than I imagined. According to age, You should be in your 80s or 90s now. I have eternal life. If you're willing to work for me, I don't mind giving you the same eternity. Chen Zhao and Bifla exchanged glances again. This guy was too arrogant. Eternity? The two of them were already at the top of the spiritual world, right? There was also Mary, Zhang Tianyi and John Sr. Even the five of them combined couldn't achieve eternity. This guy actually dared to say that he would grant them eternity? It seems like you still have some doubts about me. It's okay, I can give you some benefits first. As he spoke, Ruik Des pointed at Bifla, and a green light shot towards Bifla. Bifla stood in place, and allowed the green light to shine on his body. Then Bifla's breathing became heavy. What do you think? Can you feel it? I have just bestowed upon you an even greater power than before. If there are no accidents, you should be more than twice as strong as before. Chen Zhao looked at Bifla curiously. Bifla took a deep breath and punched the wall. His fist was embedded into the wall, and it looked like it was full of strength. Ruik Des was obviously very satisfied with his results. He was also satisfied with Bifla's astonished expression. What do you think? Are you satisfied with your strength? Give it to me. I want it too. I want to be as strong as him. Chen Zhao shouted impatiently. Restrain yourself. You have to have some hesitation in your anticipation, and some uneasiness in your excitement. Bifla's voice rang out again. Then are you willing to submit to me? Of course. We'll do whatever you want us to. Chen Zhao stared at Ruik Des, his eyes shining. Then kneel down and show your allegiance to me. No. Chen Zhao suddenly rejected him. What era are we in? You still like to be worshipped by others. Don't tell me you want to be a god or something. That's too low. Don't tell me you really have such a lowly idea. Fine, forget it if you don't want to kneel. Ruik Des waved his hand. He was very uncomfortable from Chen Zhao's stare. Do you really want to disguise yourself as a god? If so, we don't really mind, but don't do something like kneeling so easily. If Chen Zhao could see Ruik Des's expression now, he would definitely see that his face was red. Oh, who's the person beside you? Then, Chen Zhao looked at the smiling man beside Ruik Des. From the moment they appeared until now, the man had been grinning. He had no other expression. He's my servant and slave. He completely submits to me, and is under my control. You're not thinking of turning us into him, are you? Chen Zhao said in disdain. It's really creepy. Even if you want to become like him, it's impossible. You're more useful than him. Really? What abilities does he have? In what way are we better than him? You can do many things for me, but the slave can't leave my side. Can't leave your side? Actually, he's your bodyguard, right? Okay, let's not talk about these trivial things. Let's leave this place first. Stay where you are and don't resist my power. Ruik Des's black aura enveloped Chen Zhao and Bifla. Then the two felt a force lifting them up. Suddenly, Chen Zhao and Bifla felt something lifting them up. However, this force was too insignificant for them. It wasn't enough to lift them up at all. In the end, they still had to use their own power to fly. If Ruik Des found that he couldn't drag the two of them, he might give himself away. Fortunately, Ruik Descartes thought that Chen Zhao and Bifla were just two regular professional assassins. So the two hadn't been exposed yet. Should we compete to see who's exposed first, and who's discovered by this guy first? Chen Zhao glanced at Bifla, who was also flying beside him. He nodded and didn't say anything. He didn't know what kind of spell Bifla had used to send messages. Anyway, he had nothing else to do now. For now he'd play with Ruik Des. From the previous contact, Chen Zhao could tell that Ruik Des was an arrogant spiritualist. He also liked to show off his magic. He seemed to like to find a sense of superiority from ordinary people. Of course, it couldn't be denied that he did have some abilities. Although he wasn't at the top, he was at least at a high level. Chen Zhao estimated Ruik Des' abilities. They should be about the same as Hallie's, or maybe even stronger. But his strength should be limited. Mobile version of the fastest.d website. Chapter 2194. If power, identity, status, reputation, and other factors were combined into a ranking, for example, Zhang Tianyi, 23rd Blood Mary, and John Sr. were all top figures in the spiritual world. Their power, identity, and status were all at the top. There was no room for improvement. At least, the possibility of improvement was very small. Chen Zhao and Bifla were close to the top. For example, Bifla's power was slightly lacking, but his identity and status were also not to be underestimated. Chen Zhao's identity, status, and reputation were slightly lacking. Nevertheless, they were already top in a certain aspect. At least one of them could be mentioned in the same breath as the top few. Below them were the publicly recognized experts. Some people classified them as top experts. They had a certain identity, status, reputation, and outstanding power. Of course, power was the most important. As long as one had power, it was not difficult to become famous in the spiritual world. Ruik Des's strength wasn't top-notch, but he was close. He did not notice Chen Zhao and Bifla at all. On one hand, he was prejudiced. On the other hand, he was overconfident. On the other hand, Chen Zhao and Bifla liked this game. It was because of their cooperation that Ruik Des really thought that he controlled everything. The two were brought to a deserted cemetery. Chen Zhao and Bifla were both spiritualists. But they did not like this place. No one would like a place like this. Chen Zhao had once asked Helith if she liked dark and damp places. In the end, Helith only rolled her eyes in reply. A gloomy environment would give people a feeling of insecurity. This was the fear of nature that humans had retained during their evolution. On the other hand, a damp environment would purely affect people's physiological reactions. Ruik Des opened an underground entrance. Go in. Ruik Des pointed at the entrance. There won't be any man-eating monsters inside. You brought us here to be food for some monster, right? Do you have persecutory delusions? Ruik Des said angrily. In the end, Chen Zhao and Bifla were also driven in. The underground base did not look old. It seemed to have been built recently. Soon they got their answer. After walking along the corridor for a while, they saw a few rotting corpses working there. To be precise, these corpses were completing the renovation workers' work. The construction of this underground base was not yet complete. Judging from the decoration style, Ruik Saunders' preferences were more modern. At least it was completely different from the gloomy graveyard outside. At first, Chen Zhao and Bifla had thought that the base under the eerie graveyard would only be scarier. However, the environment here made them both heave a sigh of relief. If it was really a dirty base, the two of them might not be able to last long. At this moment, a group of people walked over from the front. Everyone was wearing tight-fitting clothes of the same style. It was the same for both men and women. As for skin color, there were yellow, white, and black people. Mr. Sanders. Everyone was in awe of Ruik Dales. At the same time, he looked at Chen Zhao and Bifla, who were behind Ruik Des. Are they new here? Yes, they're new here. You guys have to get along well. Also get someone to show them around. You two, please follow me. A tall woman stood up. She seemed to be the big sister of the group. She had the temperament of a leader. Her outstanding looks and strength, coupled with her personal aura, made it hard for others to object when she spoke. Chen Zhao and Bifla followed the woman obediently. Let me introduce myself. I'm Mado Shinji. I'm Chen Zhao from China. Bifla from Central Asia. What do you do? Mado Shinji asked. Assassins. Assassins. Is that so? Seems like Mr. Sanders is no longer satisfied with ordinary people. Mado Shinji's voice was not loud, but it still reached Chen Zhao and Bifla's ears. Both of them sensed something unusual in Madwa Shinji's tone. Was it a sense of urgency? She seemed to be afraid of being eliminated. The cafeteria is up ahead. Madwa Shinji pointed to the front and said, the meal times here are fixed. Breakfast is from 6 to 8, lunch is from 12 to 1, and dinner is from 6 to 7. After the meal time, you won't be able to eat anything and can only go hungry. I feel like this place is militarized. Oh, do we have to wear these ugly uniforms like you? That's right. Mado Shinji nodded. You don't have to like it, but Mr. Sanders won't change his mind because of you. What did you do before? Chen Zhao asked curiously. I was a clerk, but that was a year ago, until I met Mr. Sanders, Mado Shinji said. I'm curious. A clerk following a dark warlock. Did he drug you with some kind of drug? Or some magic? No, I just paid him back. He helped me do something that I couldn't do. In exchange, I'll serve him for 10 years. I don't think there's anything wrong with our deal. Although Mato Shinji seemed to have her own opinions, her words seemed to be a little protective of Ruik Des. He's just using you. I know, but there's nothing wrong with that. We both take what we need. Chen Zhao shrugged. It seemed that provoking Mato Shinji didn't work. What do we need to do here? Accept experiments and modifications? Like in the movies? Something like that. Will you mutate and go crazy in the end? That's right. If you fail, you will indeed mutate and go crazy. That's scary. I'm starting to regret it. Chen Zhao turned to Bifla. Even if you regret it, it's too late. From the moment you came here, there's no way out. After all, including me, no one will let you leave here alive and spread the secrets of this place. We're killers. Our lips are sealed. We only trust the dead. Mr. Sanders too. Okay, I'll be good, right, Bifla? Yes. Good. After all, I don't want to kill. You've never killed before. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.